Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through velvet curtains into a world most history books barely whisper about. We're following courtesans, not the glittering, painted versions that men saw in candlelight, but the real people they became once the doors closed and the audience disappeared. This isn't a hero's journey. It's a complicated, sometimes aching, sometimes hilarious look into the lives of women who navigated power, beauty, and brutal politics with terrifying grace. You'll see their laughter, their secrets, their jealousies, their strength, and yes, you probably won't survive this, because being one of them required a stamina most of us wouldn't last a week with. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I always appreciate hearing where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are, so drop your city and the hour in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hear the soft snick of the sliding screen behind you. The perfume of sandalwood and crushed cherry petals lingers faintly in the air, already beginning to cool from the heat of evening. The laughter from the tea house floor below is distant now, muffled by velvet-lined walls and thick-woven mats. It's over for the night. He's gone, finally. The air changes the moment the final guest's footsteps fade down the corridor. Everyone exhales at once, a collective release that no one voices. Even the floor seems to relax under your weight. A servant girl, barely older than a child, appears wordlessly at the threshold to collect the tray. No eye contact, no words exchanged. Just a practiced motion, so fluid it's almost choreography. You peel the embroidered wrap from your shoulders and let it slide down, pooling like spilled cream at your feet. For the first time in hours, your spine isn't rigid with performance. You let your face soften. Not pretty soft, just neutral, real. You're no longer what he wanted. You're just you again. The other courtesans drift in like ghosts in slippers. One coughs, deep and rattling, and mutters a curse under her breath about smoke-filled kimonos. Another peels fake lashes from the corner of her eye with a wince. Someone's wig lands with a soft thump on the silk cushion beside you. It's like the world slowly tilting back to its natural angle after hours of holding itself wrong. No more pretending to be the ideal, no more saying, yes, that's fascinating, when it absolutely is not. Here in the dim quiet above the main hall, the show ends, and the real stories begin. Your own robe is loose now, just silk and ease. You shuffle toward the private quarters, bare feet sticking faintly to polished wood. Behind one of the bamboo screens, a pair of girls are already giggling, drunk off leftover plum wine and the joy of no longer being watched. There's something electric in this space that men never get to see. Something feral, kind, wicked, warm. It's like shedding a skin. And there's this unspoken understanding always humming in the background. Tonight, you survived. That's enough for now. You sink down onto the futon, bones aching. Not just from kneeling for hours or dancing or sitting in positions designed to flatter men's egos, but from holding it all in. Your mind drifts as your hand unconsciously rubs the arch of your foot. Somewhere behind you, someone's singing a lullaby off-key. A cat purrs from a windowsill, tail twitching. And in this quiet hour, a curious paradox emerges. This is when the courtesans are most themselves, when they are not performing femininity for someone else's gaze, but inhabiting a different kind of womanhood, one shaped by female gaze, female comfort, female rhythm. Their jokes are sharper here. Their smiles more mischievous, their sadness unfiltered. Historically, most people only know what was written about courtesans by the men who paid them, but the women themselves left behind other clues, letters, poems, careful notes pressed between the seams of clothing or scratched into the undersides of vanity mirrors, and one fringe discovery, made in a burned-out tea-house cellar in the 1940s, revealed a trove of these secret artifacts, coded messages hidden in makeup cases, erotic sketches exchanged between women, and a diary written entirely in seasonal flower references. Scholars still debate the meanings. Some say they're just pretty metaphors. Others argue they're confessions, emotional or sexual, and that women were documenting their real lives in veiled botanical language. No consensus yet, just the lingering perfume of mystery. But whatever else they were, objects of desire, artists of illusion, tools of politics, courtesans were never passive. Not really. And when the men left, that truth became sharp as a hidden blade. This was the time they stole back for themselves. Time to plot, to mock, to heal, to mourn, to mentor. Time to remember their real names, because few ever called them by it. You run a hand through your scalp, real hair this time, not the lacquered thing you wore to dinner. You breathe deep. It's the first unguarded breath of the night. And just as you're about to slide under the blankets, you hear it, soft but sure. The low, deliberate click of a lock turning on the inner courtyard door. Someone's closing it, not for safety, for privacy. The last man is gone. The first hour of freedom begins. The first thing to come off is the makeup, not in a rush, not in a fury. This isn't that kind of shedding. It's a ritual, a slow and practiced art, and you're not the only one indulging in it. All around you, the powder comes off with careful strokes of cloth soaked in rice water, with fingers tracing the familiar planes beneath the mask. The mirror catches glimpses of real faces, not the flawless porcelain ghosts meant to entice strangers, but the faces you live with. Faces with faint freckles, with scars from small accidents no one else ever noticed, with laugh lines starting to settle around the eyes. A whole room of women peeling themselves back into something truer. You pick up a small polished comb, its teeth worn soft from years of use. You drag it through your hair, slowly teasing out the day's tangles. Behind you, someone is humming an old folk tune, something from the countryside, not meant for ears that pay for sophistication. Another courtesan is leaning against the wall, dabbing at a stubborn smudge of black around her eyes, grumbling as if it personally offended her. "He said I looked like a moon goddess," she mutters. "Turns out moon goddesses have raccoon eyes." Laughter flickers around the room like candlelight. Real laughter, not the breathy, delicate giggles meant for men's egos. These are low chuckles, snorts, even the occasional cackle that doubles someone over. One girl burps mid-laugh and doesn't even apologise. And someone else, an older one with a cigarette already lit, goes, "Moon goddess, maybe." But you snore like a temple bell. Another round of laughter, louder now, free and unfiltered. There's an entire ecosystem of inside jokes here. Puns that only make sense in dialects you haven't heard outside these walls. Nicknames that have absolutely nothing to do with real names. Titles like Madam Scissors or Two-Teeth Tora earned from bizarre, barely remembered incidents. You're Cricket because of that one night you wore green and jumped when a rat scurried across the hall. That was months ago, and it's stuck. It's not malicious. It's affection wrapped in mockery, the only kind that feels safe. Someone brings out a small case of hairpins and everyone flocks. The game begins. The room becomes a flurry of snapping sounds, swirling fabric, and exclamations of, "Too sharp," or, "That one makes my ears look weird." You reach into your drawer and pull out your favourite, an old pin with a missing pearl, not worth much to anyone but you. It was a gift from a former friend, another courtesan who vanished without warning last spring. No notes, no scandal, just gone. Sometimes, late at night, you still hope she made it out. Other times, you wonder if she's buried under the bridge like the rumours say. You don't wear the pin when men are around, but tonight it goes in your hair. The room shifts into a rhythm only women know. Makeup off, robes loosened, voices rising and falling like a sea with no wind to trouble it. Someone starts braiding another's hair, fingers deft and familiar. You feel a tug at your own strands and lean back, allowing yourself to be fussed over. There's something childlike about it, like when your sister used to braid your hair before your family sold you to the tea house. You never saw her again. You think of her now, wondering where she is, what her hair looks like these days. There's food, of course, not the delicate, artfully arranged dishes meant for display, but the good stuff, the greasy, messy, stolen bites that really satisfy. A basket of fried dough puffs is passed around. Someone digs out pickled plums. Another woman appears with half a melon, already scooped and dripping, and a wooden spoon stuck right in the middle. You all dive in like wolves in silk. Nobody's polite about it. As you chew, the conversation turns to the clients. Not the romantic bits, but the absurd ones. A girl tells a story about a merchant who cried because she beat him at Go. Another imitates a court official's nasal voice so perfectly you almost choke laughing. It's cathartic the way mockery becomes a form of taking power back. Outside these walls, those men hold rank, wealth, sometimes even life and death, but here, they're punchlines. Amid the laughter, there's a quiet commentary going on. Gestures, eye rolls, knowing glances exchanged without a word. One woman crosses her eyes and points her thumb to the ceiling, a code for "that one's back again next week." You all groan, everyone has that client. The one who thinks he's charming but smells like pickled fish, or the one who insists on composing terrible poetry while crying into his wine. There's a camaraderie in surviving them. Of course, not all men are equal in this ecosystem, and when one of the younger girls asks about a high-ranking daimyo who's rumoured to be different, the room shifts. He doesn't hit. He listens. He brings books. One woman shrugs and says, "Still a man." Another rolls her eyes. Still pays to pretend. Then the conversation dips into silence. Not uncomfortable, just the kind of hush that comes when everyone's chewing or thinking and both. You lie back on a cushion and close your eyes for a moment. The room smells like skin and smoke and fried dough, and somehow that's comforting, familiar. Historically, these moments are rarely recorded. Men didn't see them, and women had little reason or opportunity to document them. But some rare writings survive. A sliver of calligraphy on rice paper describing laughter after the paint is gone, believed to be a haiku written by a courtesan to her lover, never delivered. And in one fringe account found in a foreign traveller's journal, there's a brief, baffled description of a private gathering overheard through paper-thin walls, a cacophony of strange female sounds, not sadness, not song. The scholar who transcribed it debated whether it was laughter or wailing. Honestly, it was probably both. The night wears on. Bellies full, hair unpinned again, bodies sprawled in undignified comfort. Someone draws faces on rice cakes and balances them on her chest while lying flat to peals of delighted shrieking. The moment won't be remembered tomorrow. Not exactly, but the feeling of it, the sweetness, the messiness, the safety, will stay with you. You don't say it out loud, but this is your favourite time of night. The part where nothing is required of you except being. No seduction, no calculation. Just skin and laughter and crumb-dotted robes. And as someone pulls a blanket over your feet and another girl mumbles something half asleep about a duck she dreamed of with your face, you smile. You made it through another performance. And now you're here, in this unruly, sacred, hidden corner of womanhood, where men aren't needed and the jokes are finally funny. The room has gone quiet now, except for the slow creaking of wood as someone shifts their weight and the occasional whisper of fabric being pulled over tired limbs. But you're still awake, staring up at the ceiling of beams with their dusty lines and tiny cracks that look like rivers on an old map. This is the hour when the quarters shift from playful to contemplative, when the peeling of performance has gone deep enough that even the masks beneath the masks start to come off. You sit up and look around. In this private world, hierarchy is still a presence, but it behaves differently than it does in front of guests. It's not about who gets the biggest jewels or the grandest kimonos. It's about who has survived the longest, who knows the rules best, who can deliver a side-eye that stops a room. You know exactly who those women are. You've watched how others defer to them, how they speak without raising their voices, and how even the matron bows her head slightly when passing them in the hall. The quarters reflect this order in subtle ways. The most senior courtesans don't sleep near the doors or the drafty corners. They have the warmest spaces, the most cushions, the lacquered boxes with hidden compartments only they are allowed to touch. You once peeked into one of those boxes when you were new and reckless. Inside were small vials, a coin you didn't recognize, and a letter written in 2 languages. You never told anyone what you saw. Tonight, one of them, Lady Yuzu, who's old enough that no one remembers her real name, sits by the tiny hearth near the centre of the room. She's not quite ready to sleep yet, and because of that no one else dares do more than half close their eyes. She has her tea, her pipe, and the full weight of experience. When she speaks, everyone listens. She taps her pipe on the rim of her tray. "Back when I started," she says, "we weren't allowed to sleep indoors the first week, had to earn it." Her voice is thin but steady, with that slanted rhythm of someone who knows how to keep an audience. She always begins like this, dropping some grim fragment of the past just to see who'll flinch. One of the youngest girls, pink-cheeked and still full of questions, raises her head. "Where did you sleep then?" "On the porch," Lady Yuzu replies, "unless it was raining." Then under the porch, she smirks. Good for the bones, builds humility. You can't help but laugh, but it's a soft laugh, careful not to break the spell. These stories are more than entertainment. They're lessons, warnings, and sometimes quiet boasts. And this is one of the few spaces where truths can be shared without risking reputation. She tells another tale about a rival who stole her comb and buried it in a flower pot to curse her beauty. "Didn't work," she says with a wink. even though her face in this light is a landscape of age and memory. And everyone laughs, not because it's true, but because the way she tells it makes it feel like it was. Later, the conversation turns more serious. One of the mid-tier courtesans, a woman called Plum, clever and rarely sentimental, asks how Lady Yuzu managed to avoid falling in love with her clients. The question hangs there like steam in the air. "I didn't," Lady Yuzu says after a pause. "I fell in love, hard, with one who promised he'd take me away from all this." She blows smoke toward the ceiling. "He did take me away for exactly 1 week. Then he brought me back like a piece of bad fruit. Said I was too sharp for his mother. It's not a sad story, not in her voice. It's told like a parable." The younger ones nod slowly, absorbing it. You remember when you first realized your heart had to become a locked box. No matter how gentle they seemed, men almost always preferred the idea of you to the actual weight of your existence. That weight gets heavy fast. There's a reason many courtesans write poetry in secret. Not for love, not for fame, but because no one else can hold what they carry. One of the oldest preserved poems by a courtesan, scratched into the inside cover of a dressing mirror, simply reads, "He said I looked fragile, but he couldn't carry me." It's only 8 words, and it still makes your chest ache. Lady Yuzu leans back now, her tea long gone, her pipe coal. Her eyes close and her breathing slows, the signal that court is over. You lie back again, letting your thoughts drift upward. The walls in here are lined with silk screens, inked with cherry blossoms and cranes, but they may as well be mirrors. You look at them and see different versions of yourself, past selves, possible futures, women you're not ready to become. There's one woman who keeps mostly to herself, Tomo. She sleeps near the far wall closest to the window. No one knows quite what her rank is. She doesn't speak much, but she listens, observes. You catch her watching sometimes, with that unreadable expression that says she's filing every moment away. It's rumoured she keeps a journal. Not a little one for gossip, but a thick ledger-style book she hides behind the roof tiles. People say if it were ever found, the entire pleasure district could burn. You wonder what she would write about tonight. The hairpins, the moon goddess joke, Lady Yuzu's story. Would she mention the quiet moments, like when someone reached out to fix the hem of your robe without even thinking? Would she record your name? No one speaks as the lanterns are finally turned low. You hear the last one extinguish with a soft whoosh, and then, only breathing, slow and staggered like waves lapping against shorelines in the dark. You're not asleep yet, and you know others aren't either. But this silence is sacred, stitched together with the trust that no one here will disturb it. It's a silence that only women understand. The kind that follows a night of vulnerability and shared space. The kind that means you're safe for now. The weight of the day is finally off your chest. And in the soft, shared dark you exhale it all, stories, laughter, longing, and feel it dissolve into the quiet hum of the hidden world you live in. A world no man could ever truly see. The morning doesn't arrive with trumpets or a bright fanfare of light. It slips in slowly, like a guilty lover leaving at dawn. Pale grey seeps across the rice paper screens, soft and uninvited. You wake to the faint rustle of movement, not the chaotic thud of a servant's footsteps or the clamour of guests. Just the quiet choreography of women returning to themselves before the day begins again. You sit up, robe slipping off one shoulder, and glance around. No one speaks yet. The energy is low, humming just beneath the surface. Hair is tousled, lips bare, and the smell of last night's plum wine still lingers faintly in the fabric. Across the room, someone stretches with a cat-like yawn, their arms raised so high you can hear their spine pop. It's a sound so raw and ordinary it almost makes you laugh. So much beauty here and not a single soul trying to be beautiful. There's a new girl sitting near the edge of the room. She must have arrived last night, after the others fell asleep. She's still wrapped tight in her sleeping robe, eyes wide, unsure of when it's safe to move. You recognize that look, like a deer placed in a cage full of lions, only to find that the lions are too tired to care. Yet. No one acknowledges her right away. That's the rule. New girls have to watch before they're invited in. Everything here works on unspoken timing. Eventually, one of the older courtesans, Sumaya, tosses her a pear. Not gracefully, just a casual underhand lob that smacks into the girl's lap with a soft thud. A test. The girl startles, but she picks it up without fumbling and nods her thanks. A beat passes. Then Sumaya says, "You snore." Laughter bursts like a dropped tray. Just like that, the new girl is real. initiated by humour, not through cruelty or hazing, but through the absurd little rite of being noticed. The matron enters then with her usual expression of faint disapproval that seems permanently stitched into the corners of her mouth. She carries a list, as always. That list controls everything. Who's scheduled for clients, who's off, who's being inspected, and who's been summoned by someone too important to decline. She doesn't look at anyone while she speaks, just reads, then tucks the list back into her sleeve and disappears. Her power lies in the fact that she never needs to raise her voice. She just exists, and things move. You, luckily, are off today. No performance, no makeup, no careful words, just space to exist. You stretch your legs and pad toward the inner quarters. A pot of barley porridge is already warming over the coals. A few girls sit around it, quietly eating with the absent stare people get when chewing becomes automatic. It's not glamorous. The bowls are chipped, and the porridge is bland, but it's warm and real, and somehow that's enough. Then comes the part of the day that no one talks about, but everyone does, the whispering. Not gossip exactly, more like updates. What that client said last time, which servant got caught stealing rice, who left early last night, and who came back smelling of blood. A thread of information passed around like a secret note in school, but laced with survival. Today's big whisper is about Orin, who hasn't returned. She was sent to a client in another district 2 days ago and hasn't been seen since. The matron says she's staying longer, but the tone, the way she avoided meeting anyone's eyes, says something else. You all remember what happened the last time a girl didn't come back. You remember the silence that followed. You remember the smell when the river thawed in spring. The talk drifts, as it always does, into memories of her. Orin with her fast hands and her foul mouth. Orin who once kicked a man in the shin when he tried to touch her before he paid. She always wore her sash backward, like she didn't care if anyone thought she was doing it wrong. You miss her laugh, the one that sounded like a donkey in distress. Funny how things you mocked in someone become the very things that make your chest ache after they're gone. After breakfast, the room begins to shift again. The younger girls are assigned their chores: laundry, polishing the floorboards, brushing out the wigs, folding the guest linens. This isn't a fantasy, it's a job, and jobs have upkeep. You find yourself at the bathhouse door, pulling back the curtain into a space filled with steam and the wet slap of towels. The baths are quieter this early, and somehow more intimate. Without makeup or adornment, everyone looks different. Softer, older, younger, real. You step into the heat and feel your skin sigh in relief. Across from you, 2 women are crouched side by side, scrubbing each other's backs in silence. It's not erotic, it's necessary. It's one of those gestures that exists purely between women, caring without expectation, touch without demand. You dunk your cloth in the water and press it to your neck, closing your eyes. The steam opens everything. It pulls memories out of your pores. You remember your first week here, the fear, the disorientation, the confusion of being touched by strangers, then hugged by women who barely knew you. The way nothing made sense, and then, suddenly, it all did. Not long ago, archaeologists uncovered a bathing token etched with the names of courtesans, not just stage names, but their real names. It was hidden under a bathhouse floor, likely placed there on purpose. Some scholars argue it was a memorial. Others say it was a protest, proof that they existed beyond their performance. Fringe historians even suggest it might have been a pact, a silent sisterhood recorded in copper. You wonder what they would write about you if someone were carving names under the floor again today. Would they remember your jokes, the way you fold your towel into perfect thirds, the time you stayed up all night holding Tomo's hand when her fever wouldn't break? You hear a splash and open your eyes just in time to see someone do a sloppy cannonball into the big tub. Laughter erupts again, echoing off the stone walls. Even the stoic ones can't help but smile. This place, this hour, it's sacred in its ridiculousness, like a temple where the gods are all a little hungover. When you step out of the bath, wrapped in a robe that smells of lavender and clean skin, and you feel lighter. Not because anything has changed, not because the world outside these walls is any kinder, but because for now, inside them you are allowed to be whole. By midday, the quarters have shifted again. The silence of morning has given way to soft motion and muted energy. It's not quite rest and not quite work. A strange in-between hour where nothing is required, yet no one feels entirely at ease. You sit by the window, knees tucked under your robe, watching as light crawls lazily over the paper screens. Somewhere outside, a bird shrieks like it's dying, then flutters away. The garden beyond the tea house is unremarkable. Just raked gravel and a few tired azaleas. But right now it feels like a stage where nothing has to happen. A breeze catches your sleeve and for a moment you're not anyone. Not a name, not a performance, just skin, fabric and breath. That doesn't last. You hear the low murmur of strategy starting in the next room. The quiet conversations that are part survival, part war council. No one teaches you this part outright, but you learn fast. The girls who don't disappear. Because being a courtesan isn't just about charm or beauty. It's about navigation, calculation, knowing which client will tip extra for compliments, which will crumble if you contradict them gently, and which one only respects you if you seem unimpressed. You rise, pad barefoot into the main chamber, and find the others in a loose circle. It's not formal, not a meeting. But everyone knows what this is. A few have ledgers open. One has a folded fan pressed to her lips in thought. On the table are 2 lacadorfidid boxes, one filled with client tokens, the other with scrap paper and notes, sketches, little clippings of gossip scrawled in shorthand. This is where the real business happens. Not under chandeliers or in the arms of drunk lords, but here, in cotton robes and messy buns. Sumaya speaks first. "The merchant from the ironworks is coming back on the 12th, she says, tapping her fan. He thinks I'm fascinated by metallurgy. I can't even spell metallurgy. The room chuckles, but someone adds, "Isn't he the one who eats with his mouth open?" "He drools," says another. "I mean literally. He licks his lips mid-sentence like a frog." Still, no one suggests she drop him, because frog or not, he tips double if you ask questions about iron smelting. And money is money. They move on. A list of clients is passed around, each name evoking a symphony of reactions. Snorts, eye rolls, groans, silences. These men are maps, and the women here are expert cartographers. You each know which roads are smooth, which are dangerous, and which lead to nowhere. When it's your turn, someone glances your way. "You still seeing the scholar from Edo?" You nod, slowly. "He brings books, real ones. He's dull, but he reads to me." This earns you a few raised brows, as reading aloud is a rare intimacy. Too rare, maybe. Tomo, quiet as always, speaks for the first time in hours. Dull men are the most dangerous. They wait. They plan. It lands heavy. No one argues. This too is part of the hidden life. Knowing when a smile becomes a lie, when safety is an illusion, when the tea has been poisoned, figuratively or not. And no one knows the signs better than the women gathered in this room. There's a silence. Not fear exactly, just awareness. You all live with it, like wallpaper. Then someone breaks it. "I once told a daimyo he had the hands of a poet," Plum says, grinning. "He cried. Actual tears. Laughter cracks through the room like a thunderclap. It's too loud, too sudden, but you need it. The tension breaks. Someone falls backward laughing. Another clutches her side. And just like that, the weight lifts. Not gone, just set down for a moment. In one corner, you notice a girl scribbling something in a folded piece of paper. You know what it is, a code she's making up, likely with symbols only she understands. Another quiet ledger in a world built on illusion. These little notes, passed around or hidden under pillows, are currency. Secrets, suspicions, warnings. A few months ago, one saved your life. Hastily drawn sketch of a fan with red feathers. That was the signal. It told you not to follow a certain client out the back entrance. You didn't. The girl who did had to be carried home. Scholars still argue whether courtesans engaged in organised networks of espionage, spying for rival houses, passing notes to lords, influencing politics through gossip. Some say it's romantic nonsense. Others claim they were the invisible hand guiding entire decisions behind closed doors. But ask any courtesan who's lived this life long enough and she'll smirk, sip her tea, and say nothing at all. The meeting winds down. Assignments are clear. Scripts for the next week's performances are being shaped in these casual remarks. Who to flatter, who to ignore, who to slowly ice out with fake warmth and distant smiles. There's an art to it, one few people outside these walls will ever grasp. But here, among women who've watched each other bleed, cry and paint their faces back on, it's second nature. Afterward, you return to your room and find your small lacquer box where you left it. You lift the lid. Inside is your own ledger. Not grand, not poetic, Just notes, names, dates, phrases overheard, and expressions to memorize. One page has a drawing of a man's face beside a snake. Another has your own name, circled 3 times next to the phrase "don't disappear." You close it gently. Outside, you hear the bell from the front gate chime. A client has arrived early. He won't see you today. You're off. But someone else gets up, adjusts her robe, smooths her hair, slides her face into position. And just like that, the performance begins again. But in here, among your sisters, you know the truth. That the real stage is in this room, where the show never ends, and the audience is one another. You have the afternoon to yourself, no clients, no performance, no obligation to smile unless you feel like it. And you don't. Instead, you drift toward your corner of the women's quarters where your things are kept, tucked in a modest wooden chest that smells faintly of cedar and old plum ink. Inside are the tools of your own secret craft, not the paint pots or lashes or perfume vials, but brushes, parchment, and a collection of pigment stones you've ground yourself. This is the part of your life no one pays to see, paint, ink, and pubim, the slow art of existing for your own eyes. You pull the chest open and lay the materials out carefully. Your brush is worn at the tip, soft from use and shaped by your hand alone. You love it the way a warrior might love a blade, not because it's perfect, but because it's survived things with you. You grind ink slowly, patiently, the stone rasping under the pressure of your palm. The scent of pine soot rises, grounding and dark, mixing with the faint floral traces from the sachet under your sleeve. Outside, you hear the rustle of fabric and footsteps, the others busying themselves in little pockets of the house, tending to hairpieces, stretching, or simply wandering in quiet solitude. You wonder how many of them also have their hidden arts. Everyone here has something. One carves soap figurines and hides them under the floorboards. Another writes fictional letters to a husband she pretends died in a war. You once caught Sumaire embroidering curse words in elegant calligraphy across a kimono lining. She winked when she saw you looking. You begin to paint, not for anyone else, not for commissions or gifts or to woo a patron. You paint because it stills something inside you. The brush glides across the paper, coaxing form from emptiness. You don't sketch beautiful women or noblemen. Today it's a branch of twisted persimmons, bruised and half-rotting, one still clinging to its stem. Maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe it's just what your mind settled on. There's a story passed between courtesans about a woman who became a master calligrapher in secret. They say her scrolls were so exquisite that an emperor once unknowingly displayed one in his palace, never suspecting the artist had once poured him tea naked. The scroll was unsigned. She never claimed credit, never wanted to. Her art was her escape, not her brand. You like to think that's true, that somewhere her brushstrokes still hang, defying time and shame, that maybe one day someone will find your persimmons and wonder what woman painted such bruised beauty, and why. When you finish, you set the painting aside to dry and open the drawer beneath your inkstone. Inside is a cloth pouch filled with tiny vials, your perfume experiments. Scents you've spent years mixing and remixing from stolen herbs, leftover oils, and whatever contraband ingredients you could smuggle in through sympathetic servants. This is another secret language. A way of saying something no one else can quite name. You dab a blend behind your ears. Rice flour, dried plum, and a hint of camphor. It doesn't smell like a lover's dream. It smells like memory. And strength. You imagine walking past someone who hurt you, watching them flinch slightly, unsettled by a scent they can't place. You imagine it clinging to your sleeves like a shield. The use of perfume by courtesans is well documented, but what's rarely spoken of is how it became armor. A certain scent could signal to other women what kind of client you'd just survived. Another might mean leave me alone tonight. Some would dab a drop of clove oil on their neck if they needed rescuing mid-conversation. Others wore no scent at all, as if daring anyone to touch them without permission. The perfumes weren't just for seduction, they were code. You hear soft footsteps behind you and turn to find Tomo standing in the doorway. She says nothing, just watches for a moment, eyes flicking to your painting. Then with a nod she steps inside and kneels beside you. She doesn't ask what the painting means or why you chose those colours. She just sits quietly, reaching into her own robe to pull out a small beaten notebook. It's wrapped in twine and smells faintly of smoke and ink. She begins to write. You don't ask what, that's the unspoken rule here. Creative privacy is sacred. What's made in this space belongs to the maker until they choose to share it, if ever. The two of you sit like that for a long time, the sounds of the house distant and low. A kettle whistles from another room. Someone plays a soft, wandering tune on a shamisen upstairs. You're not close friends exactly, more like mirrors who see the same fracture lines in each other, but that's enough. Eventually Tomo stands, brushes off her robe, and leaves without a word. You stay behind, watching the ink in your painting dry into deeper shadow. There are days when all of this feels like a cage, but today it feels like a sanctuary. A place where you can drip yourself onto paper and know you existed, even if no one outside ever sees it. Later that day, while rearranging your box, you find a tiny paper scrap tucked under the pigments. You don't remember putting it there. You unfold it carefully. It's a note, written in an unfamiliar hand. Only 3 words: "Don't stop painting." You stare at it, stunned. For a heartbeat, your body forgets to breathe. Someone saw, someone knew, maybe Tomo, maybe not. You don't know whether to feel exposed or honoured. Scholars often debate whether the courtesans of old had true artistic freedom, or whether all their art was just an extension of performance. What they forget is that not everything needs an audience to matter. Sometimes the act of creation is the rebellion. Sometimes it's the prayer. You fold the note and slide it into your ledger, not under clients or danger, just a new page, titled simply Me, and as the sun sinks lower and shadows stretch long across the floor, you feel something settle inside you. Not peace exactly, but presence. The sun begins to dip, bleeding gold into the grain of the wood beneath your bare feet. You feel it even before you see it, that subtle shift in light that turns the air thick and honey-coloured. Evening always feels a little like a closing door, a reminder. The hours of quiet have passed. The show is about to begin again, but not for you, not tonight. You get to stay behind the curtain, lingering in the strange tension between luxury and confinement, silk without chains. You move slowly through the corridors, robes trailing, fingers brushing the walls like they might whisper something back. The house is quieter than usual. Most of the women are preparing upstairs, twisting their hair into gravity-defying sculptures, painting faces so precise they could fool gods. You've done it yourself 100 times, turned yourself into a living portrait. But tonight, you remain barefaced and soft-footed, a shadow gliding through polished halls. You step into the inner garden, a courtyard boxed in by paper walls and old pine. It isn't large, just enough for a single gnarled tree, some carefully placed stones, and a thread-thin stream that makes no sound unless you really listen. You sit on the low step beneath the overhang, legs folded, arms draped loosely around your knees. The air here tastes different, cleaner, like someone once cared to keep this place sacred. You imagine what it would be like to leave, not to escape, not in the breathless, dramatic sense, but simply to walk away. One day you'd pass through the gate, not looking back, not carrying a single ribbon or keepsake. You'd vanish into the world, unknown and unremarkable. Start a life that doesn't depend on men's whims or the weight of painted smiles. But then what? You've been here so long the outside has become myth. And if you're honest, the soft silks and cushioned tatami have become a kind of comfort, dangerous in how they seduce you into staying still. You lean back on your hands and listen to the wind moving through bamboo. The tree creaks softly, like it's complaining. You know the feeling. The quiet, slow bend of a body that's lived too much in stillness. The garden isn't empty. Across the courtyard, under the overhang's shadow, sits Lady Ao. She's one of the highest-ranking courtesans in the house, and she rarely speaks to anyone unless she's been paid to. Her hair tonight is unpinned, falling in thick waves down her back. She's not dressed for performance either. Just a simple robe, blue-grey and frayed at the sleeve. You're startled to see her like this. Human, unadorned, exposed. She sees you, nods once, and returns to her tea. After a few minutes of companionable silence, she says, "Sometimes I imagine I'm a ghost." You blink. What kind of ghost? The kind that haunts the garden. I think I'd be good at it. I already know how to move silently. I already watch people without being seen. You smile, unsure if it's a joke, but she continues. "They call this place freedom," she murmurs. "Silk instead of shackles, but it's still a cage. Just a pretty one." Her voice isn't bitter, just factual, like she's naming the weather. There's a debate among historians, one you remember overhearing from a curious guest years ago. Some argue that high-ranking courtesans lived enviable lives, untouchable, powerful, even free. They could reject clients. They owned property, controlled vast sums of money. But others call that a fantasy. Power given by men can be taken by men. And if you must maintain beauty, wit, and mystery to survive, how free are you really? Lady Ao looks at you again. Do you ever miss your old name? You flinch. Not visibly, you hope. It's been so long since you've heard it spoken aloud that you wonder if you'd recognize it. You shake your head. No. She watches you for a beat too long, then says, liar. You want to deny it, but what would be the point? Your old name isn't dead, it's just buried under layers of silk and powder and stage names. Sometimes in dreams you still hear it, but only when no one's listening. Lady Ao stands, stretches her arms skyward, bones popping audibly. I'll haunt this garden one day, she says again. I'll rattle the stones and whisper in the wind and trip the new girls when they're too proud. You laugh. I'll leave offerings, sweet wine and dried persimmons. She grins, sharp and real, and walks back into the house, disappearing into the shadows like she was never there. You stay a while longer. The stone beneath you grows cold, but you don't move. Something about the moment feels weighted, like you've been handed a truth and you're not sure what to do with it. Not a sad truth, just a still one. You think of the strange dreams you've had lately, of water, always rising, of stepping onto a bridge and not knowing whether you'll cross or fall. They feel like warnings, or maybe invitations. The light shifts again, deeper now, orange bleeding into indigo. Somewhere inside the music starts, a delicate pluck of strings and soft bells. The first guests are arriving. You hear their voices filter up through the floorboards, already loud and hungry. They're looking for women who can fold themselves into fantasies. You rise slowly, bones stiff, and glance back once at the pine tree. If you ever become a ghost, you decide, you'll haunt here too. But you'll be the quiet kind, the one who whispers encouragement when the new girl cries in secret, the one who nudges the ink bottle just close enough for her to notice. You walk back inside, past the screens and the silk, back through the halls that smell of powder and tea. The performance is starting, but not for you. You'll sleep later. You'll paint again. Maybe write a letter you never intend to send. And tonight, you'll remember Lady Ao's voice, and how even wrapped in luxury, it trembled with something unspeakably brave. The passage to the attic is hidden behind a wall panel that sticks if you don't press your thumb just right into the groove. Not many people know about it, not even all the courtesans. You discovered it by accident years ago, chasing a spilled inkwell across the floor. Now it's your quiet corner, your secret upstairs. The air up here is thick with dust, and every step on the narrow staircase threatens to betray you with a groan. But no one ever comes looking. That makes it sacred. The attic's low ceiling means you have to crouch, and cobwebs lace the beams like ancient lace. But tucked near the back is a floorboard that lifts with the help of a bent hairpin. And beneath that, well, that's where the real secrets live. There's a small ledger wrapped in oilcloth, the pages warped from humidity. It doesn't look like much, but what's inside isn't yours. You've never written in it. You only found it, and you've only ever read parts, never all at once, like you're afraid the full truth might change you. Names fill the pages, not stage names, the real ones. Dates, short, sharp notations in cramped script. Sometimes only a single word, gone, ill, pregnant, broken, fled. Sometimes two names with a line drawn between them like a map. One girl's real name, another's stage name. Beneath some are tiny marks, barely legible, symbols you think are meant to signify outcomes. There's a star next to some, a black dot next to others. You once spent an entire night wondering what the black dots meant. Now you're fairly certain. The women who left and never returned. Not retired, not relocated, gone. Tonight, you read a page you haven't dared touch before. It's dated several years before you arrived. You recognize a few names. Lady Yuzu is listed, with a note beside her. Watchful, useful, keeps records. Your breath catches. So she knows about this. Or maybe she started it. There's a fringe theory in certain academic circles, a barely acknowledged whisper, that some courtesans maintained a shadow network. Not for spying on political rivals, but to track their own. A secret ledger, passed quietly between generations, recording fates, a living memory, a way to ensure no one was completely erased. Skeptics scoff. They point out there's no confirmed source, no first-hand account, but you're holding one, right now. Smudged ink and careful lines. A rebellion not with fire, but with paper. Tucked into the ledger is another item, a faded scrap of cloth, pink and printed with cranes barely the size of your palm. It's stained at one corner, but what catches your eye is the embroidery. 2 initials in red thread. Not yours, not anyone you know, but someone loved someone enough to stitch it. You wonder if this was a token, goodbye, or a memorial. You think about hiding it again, pretending you never found it. That would be safer, but instead, you fold the ledger closed and return it gently to its hollow, smoothing the floorboard back into place like tucking a child to bed. You leave the attic quietly, the dust settling behind you like a curtain. The house feels different after you descend, like it knows what you know now. You see the walls differently. You notice how many hinges creak, how many knots in the floor might hide something. Every cushion could contain a letter. Every screen might have been a hiding place once. Back in the quarters, the evening is in full bloom. The sounds of shamisen drift faintly from downstairs, interspersed with fake laughter, clinking cups, and the carefully modulated tones of women pretending to be intrigued. You pass through it all like a ghost, unseen but seeing everything. One of the younger girls brushes past you, perfume too heavy, her smile just a little too fixed. She's learning. You slip into Lady Yuzu's room. She's awake, sitting cross-legged and massaging oil into her knees. Her robe is open, chest wrinkled like silk that's been folded too long. She doesn't look surprised to see you. She never does. "I found it," you say, voice low. She doesn't ask what. "Why didn't you tell me?" She raises one brow. "Would you have believed me if I had?" You consider that. Probably not. She gestures to the cushion beside her. You sit. "There are things we don't speak of," she says, slow and deliberate. "Not because we're ashamed. Because some truths belong only to us. They're not for men, not for scholars, not even for each other, sometimes. But someone has to remember." You nod. "Is it your ledger?" She laughs softly, a dry, papery sound. "No, I just added to it. It's older than me. Older than this house. The idea hums through you. Something handed down generation after generation. A private history built quietly beneath the official one." "I've only read parts," you admit. She shrugs. "That's all you need. No one reads it all. Not unless they want the weight of it." You're silent for a while. Then you ask. "The marks, the black dots." Her gaze sharpens. "Yes. Why do we keep track?" Her eyes soften. "'Cause we're not meant to be remembered, and that's exactly why we must be." You leave her room feeling heavier and lighter at the same time. There's a responsibility now. A thread you didn't know you were holding has tightened around your fingers. You think again of the girl who disappeared last week, Rin. No word and no return. If the ledger is still being updated, her name will appear soon. And someone will mark her with a dot or a star or something in between, but not silence, not erasure. As you lie down that night staring at the ceiling, the house feels alive with hidden stories. A place where the floorboards breathe, the walls murmur, and every cushion might carry a memory. You aren't sure if this makes you feel safer or more trapped, but you know one thing now, and it settles into your bones like ink on paper. You are part of a lineage, quiet and fierce, a network not built with fire or banners, but with secrets and sisterhood. You're dreaming. You know it because the light doesn't behave properly. It bleeds upward from the ground instead of down from the sky, and the air smells like burnt oranges. In the dream, you're walking through the long corridor of the tea house, but the walls are made of thin paper fans, and the floor shifts under your feet like water. Somewhere behind you, a voice is calling, not loud, not urgent, just steady. You don't look back. You know better than to turn around in dreams. Then, just as the corridor begins to fold in on itself like the pages of a book, you wake to the smell of grilled rice and the soft sound of 2 women whispering. The room is still mostly dark, just the faintest crack of grey sneaking through the screens. You pull your robe tighter and rise slowly, careful not to disturb the others, who are sprawled in various states of undress and sleep. Someone's foot is pressed against your pillow. Another clutches a stuffed crane made of old linen. You head toward the wash basin, splash your face with cold water and blink at your own reflection. Without paint or pretense, you look like someone else entirely, like the girl who used to climb trees barefoot, who once hid under floorboards during a thunderstorm just for the thrill of being invisible. She's still in there, you think, buried beneath layers of powdered performance. You touch the side of your face as if to confirm you're still real. Back in the quarters, someone is folding robes. Another is sweeping. You recognize the rhythm of routine, but the mood today is different, looser, quieter. A kind of hush has settled, not heavy, just inward. You notice how the girls linger near each other longer, how touches are more frequent, a brush of the arm, a shared glance, a strand of hair tucked gently behind someone's ear. This is what they don't write about in the storybooks, the intimacy that has nothing to do with men. You catch Plum napping with her head in Sumair's lap, drooling slightly onto her sash. Sumair's running her fingers through Plum's hair absent-mindedly, while reading a pamphlet upside down. When she notices you watching, she raises an eyebrow. She bit me in her sleep once, dreamed I was a dumpling. You grin and sit down beside them. Plum mumbles something unintelligible and turns her face into Sumair's thigh. The moment is sweet, absurd, and so full of unspoken trust that your chest aches a little. You realise, not for the first time, that this is your real family. Not the one that sold you, not the clients who pay to pretend they know you. These women, with their sharp tongues and calloused hands and ink-stained robes, are the ones who would hold you up if you ever truly fell. Not all of them, of course. The house has its politics. There are rivalries, small betrayals, unspoken debts, but underneath it all is a kind of unbreakable logic. No one else understands what it means to live like this. And so, when the world outside fails you, as it inevitably does, you return here, to the ones who know your true name even if they never speak it. Later, as the sun rises, you find yourself in the corner room, the smallest one, nearest the back, where the paper walls are so thin you can hear birds arguing outside. This is where she used to sleep. You don't say her name anymore, not even in your head. She was the first woman you loved, really loved. Not with the wide-eyed devotion of a new girl or the passing passion of late-night silliness, but with something deeper, something shaped like longing and safety and shared cigarettes at midnight. She was older than you, confident. She carried herself like someone who knew exactly how much she was worth. You used to watch her walk just to memorize the rhythm of her steps. She kissed you once behind the screen after a party when everyone else was too drunk to notice. It wasn't dramatic, just her lips on yours, brief and firm and warm like punctuation. It didn't last, of course, it never does. A client asked for her exclusively and she left with him for a new district. There were letters for a while, then silence. Maybe he married her. Maybe he ruined her. You'll never know, but what you do know is this. When you look around the quarters now, when you see the way these women hold each other's secrets, how they share space and silence and grief, you know the love never left. It just changed shape. There's a popular misconception that courtesans never loved one another, that they were competitors, or too jaded, or too busy saving pieces of themselves for men. But history tells a more complicated story. Hidden among old records are tiny clues, coded letters, affectionate poems signed with flower names, love charms carved into hairpins. One account from the Edo period describes two courtesans buried side by side under false names. Officially, they were close companions. Unofficially, they were inseparable. The scholars argue, of course. Some say sisterhood, others say romance. But you know the truth doesn't need a name to exist. Tonight, one of the girls, Wren, sneaks into your sleeping corner, clearly shaken. She doesn't say why, you don't ask. She just curls up beside you, pulling your arm around her like a shield. You stroke her hair until her breathing steadies, your own eyes heavy with sleep. This is what comfort looks like in this world. Wordless, imperfect, and entirely necessary. Later, in your half-dreaming state, you feel her fingers intertwine with yours, not in a sexual way, not desperate or pleading, just a quiet connection, a reminder that you're both still here. And in that moment, you remember something Lady Yuzu once told you during a particularly cold winter when the quarters had no heat. She said, "We don't get to choose the world we're sold into, but we do get to choose how we survive it." So you squeeze Wren's fingers gently and she squeezes back. Evening descends like a hush, thick and velvety, settling over the tea house in soft folds. The lanterns are being lit one by one, their amber glow bleeding through paper screens and throwing dancing shadows across the floors. Downstairs, the laughter is starting again. The kind of laughter that doesn't belong to real joy, but to performance. You recognize the rhythm of it. The pitch just a touch too sharp, the way it stops and starts like a wind-up toy. It's dinner time for the guests, and the theatre is open for business. But upstairs, in the private chambers, something else is happening. The dinner among the courtesans has begun, and it's nothing like the performances below. No makeup, no rigid posture, no filtered speech. Just women in cotton robes with slightly damp hair and flushed cheeks, eating as if the world isn't watching, because for once, it isn't. You arrive late, stomach growling from skipping lunch, and find your place on the tatami between Plum and Tomo. The room smells like grilled fish, sticky rice vinegar, and the sharp tang of pickled radish. There's a communal bowl of Odin bubbling quietly in the centre, rich with broth and overstuffed with daikon, eggs and tofu. Sumaya is already halfway through a skewer of fish cake, chewing like she hasn't eaten in 3 days. She probably hasn't. You settle in, grab a bowl, and accept the ladle when it's passed your way. It's hot and salty, and it burns your tongue a little. But you don't care. It's real. It's yours. The dinner table, if you can call it that, isn't a place of hierarchy tonight. There's no seating order, no etiquette lesson. The senior courtesans eat beside novices, and everyone talks over each other. Someone tells a joke about a nobleman who thought dried squid was a flower arrangement and complimented it for an hour before trying to eat it. Someone else confesses she once pretended to faint to avoid a particularly flatulent samurai. That gets the loudest laugh of the night. Food is passed hand to hand, chopsticks click against bowls, and someone's elbow knocks over a cup of tea. No one even reacts. A girl just tosses a towel onto the spill without pausing her story. You glance around and realize something quietly wonderful. No one's performing. These women, their hair a little messy, their robes wrinkled, their voices unpolished, are their real selves. It's one of the only times you get to see them like this, stripped of everything men project onto them. Even Tomo, who usually keeps to the edges, is smiling now. You catch her making a face at Plum across the table, who responds by pretending to gag on a bite of pickled lotus. They're trying not to laugh with their mouths full, which only makes it worse. It's infectious, the kind of joy that bubbles up from deep places. You haven't laughed like this in weeks. Halfway through the meal, someone pulls out a bottle of plum wine that was stashed under a cushion. It's warm from proximity to body heat, but no one minds. Cups are filled, toasts are raised, not to men, not to money, but to each other. Someone shouts, "To the ones who made it through another day," and the room erupts in cheers. As you sip, your body warms, and your shoulders drop another inch. The Odeon has settled into your belly like a small, kind god. You lean into Plum's shoulder without asking, and she doesn't move away. Then, as if summoned by the spirit of drama, Lady Yuzu clears her throat. Conversations fade. She always waits for this moment. Or the perfect lull when everyone's fed and slightly tipsy. She never speaks at dinner unless she has a story to tell. "Once," she begins, "I had dinner with a prince." Groans, eye rolls, someone mutters, "Here we go," but she smiles, unbothered. He was dull, had the personality of boiled tofu, but the meal, 12 courses, one for each season, even if they didn't match the weather. The fish was still twitching when they served it. Plum shudders. "Too real," Lady Yuzu nods solemnly. "Exactly. It blinked at me." More laughter. She lets it die down before continuing. "He told me the trick to seduction was feeding a woman until she felt safe, then asking her what she feared most." Everyone quiets. This is new, not the usual story. Lady Yuzu looks around. "I told him I feared being forgotten." The silence thickens, then she shrugs. He didn't get it, went back to complimenting his twitchy fish. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry, maybe both. There's an open debate among historians about the role food played in the lives of courtesans. Some romanticize it, claiming the women dined like queens. Others argue they rarely ate at all, saving the best dishes for clients while surviving on scraps. The truth, like always, is somewhere in the middle. The performances downstairs were theatrical, lavish, full of the presentation. But the real meals, the nourishing ones, happened like this, on floors, among sisters, in bare feet and laughter. As dinner winds down, someone starts braiding hair, slowly, lazily. Another girl dozes off against the wall, mouth open slightly, half a rice cracker still in her hand. It's all so absurdly human. These women, so often reduced to symbols of seduction and elegance, are now just bodies and breath and tired smiles. You look at your hands, sticky with broth, and realize how precious this moment is. This isn't the kind of dinner anyone writes about. No client will ever see it. No record will ever capture the way someone just tucked a blanket around another girl's shoulders, or how Tomo silently slid her last piece of tofu into your bowl when she thought no one was looking. But this is what survival looks like. Not just eating, not just resting, but sharing the table in a way that makes you feel like you belong. You help gather bowls and wipe spills. Someone sings an off-key lullaby as she washes the cups. The room slowly empties, voices dimming, footsteps softening, as the women scatter back to their corners, their routines. You sit for a while longer, alone at the table, tracing a circle in the condensation left by your cup. You think about Lady Yuzu's words. I fear being forgotten. You do too, but here, for now, among these unvarnished, chaotic, beautiful women, you feel remembered. After dinner, when the bowls have been stacked and the wine's gone lukewarm, the quarters settle into what the women call the dead time. It's not night yet, not really, but the weight of the evening has shifted. Downstairs, the clients are still being entertained. Voices echo faintly through the floorboards, laughter too loud, music too perfect. But up here, everything slows down, like the house is holding its breath. You sit by the window, Eichen, watching moths bat themselves stupid against the lantern light. There's something unnervingly poetic about it. Their tiny, desperate dance toward a flame that will never love them back. A good reminder, you think, to never be a moth. But still, you can't help feeling sympathy for them. The confusion, the hunger, the tiny hope of warmth. The others have drifted into separate corners. Some are lying down already, eyes closed but not asleep. Others sit quietly, legs tucked under robes, staring at nothing. No one talks during the dead time. It's not a rule exactly, just something that evolved naturally. Too early for bed, too late for noise. It's a moment made for thoughts you've been avoiding all day. You glance across the room and see Tomo sitting upright, motionless, staring at a blank patch of wall like it's speaking to her. She does that sometimes. Gets so still you forget she's there. You used to think she was just odd, but now you recognize it. That deep quiet, that thinking too loud stillness. You've lived it. You lie back, head against your folded robe, and let your mind wander. It always goes somewhere during this time. Sometimes to the past, sometimes forward, sometimes sideways into that strange in-between space where memory and imagination blur. Tonight, it goes to a face you haven't thought about in a while. He was your first client. You don't remember his name, just the feel of his hand, dry and soft like old paper. He told you reminded him of his late wife. You were 16. He bought you plum sweets and called you little bird. You didn't know how to fake a smile yet, so you gave him your real one. He left without a word. Never returned. You learned fast after that. The room creaks as someone shifts. Outside, wind presses against the paper walls like a breath trying to get in. You pull your blanket tighter and stare at the ceiling. Every courtesan has her own version of the dead time. For some, it's when sadness comes in like a tide. For others, it's when she simmers. For you, it's uncertainty. The aching question, how long can I do this? You don't have an answer. No one does. That's the scariest part. Once you heard a woman say the scariest thing about this life wasn't the men, or the politics, or the aging. It was the sameness. The way each night blends into the next until you forget what year it is, what season, what you were before you put on the mask. You wonder what the new girls think during this hour. The ones still glowing with hope and fear. They probably dream of love, of escape, of being chosen. You don't fault them for it. You used to dream the same. Across the room, someone starts whispering. Not in a conversational way, more like a chant. You can't hear the words, just the tone. Soft, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. You don't turn to look. There's a kind of magic in not knowing who it is. It lets you pretend it could be anyone. Maybe even yourself in another life. You think of the ledger hidden in the attic, of the women listed there, their fates sealed in ink and symbols. How many of them stared at their ceilings during dead time and wondered if they'd become a black dot? A scholar once argued that courtesans didn't think about death, that their lives were too wrapped up in sensuality and performance to make space for existential dread. That scholar was an idiot. Death is everywhere here, not just literal death, though that too lurks in the corners. illness, violence, slow withering from neglect. But the little deaths are more common. The death of a name, the death of a friendship. The death of believing you'll ever be anything other than what you are right now. You've mourned so many things silently that you've become good at it. Crying without tears, grieving without sound, you've become a master of quiet loss. But sometimes, rarely, something grows into the cracks. You remember the rose plant in the courtyard, the one no one ever waters, but somehow keeps blooming. Every season, you expect it to give up, but it never does. It twists out from between the stones like a dare, like it refuses to die just because no one asked it to live. You wonder if that's what you're doing too, blooming in defiance. There's a knock at the doorframe. You sit up, startled. It's Wren. Her face is pale, eyes wide. "Can't sleep," she whispers. You nod and scoot over, letting her curl beside you under the blanket. Her feet are freezing. She shivers once, then goes still. No explanations, no apologies. This too is part of the ritual. No one asks what nightmares you're running from. We just make room. The two of you lie in silence, listening to the wind and the whispering and the occasional creak of the house settling around you. It feels old tonight, ancient, like you're living inside the ribs of something that once had a heartbeat. Eventually Wren speaks. Just one word. "Tomorrow?" You squeeze her hand. Tomorrow. It means nothing and everything. A promise you're not sure you can keep, but say anyway, because in the dead time, promises are the only thing that feel real. The moon is high now, white and blurred behind thin clouds, casting just enough light to paint the wooden beams in silver. It's late, so late it's technically early, and the only ones still awake are the ones who can't sleep. You're one of them. Again. The room is quiet except for the slow, uneven breathing of those already pulled under. You count 3 snorers, 2 murmurers, and someone grinding her teeth like she's chewing on bad dreams. You don't even try to lie still anymore. Your body knows when it's not going to rest. And tonight's one of those nights. Your mind is too busy. It churns, full of small things. The feel of Wren's cold toes under the blanket, the smirk on Tomo's face earlier, the echo of Lady Yuzu's voice telling stories about blinking fish. Nothing major, just ghosts of the day, rattling their chains softly. You rise, careful not to wake anyone, and slip out into the hallway. The air is cool, laced with smoke and the faintest whiff of burnt incense. You pass the inner sliding door and pad into the common washroom. There in the corner is the old vanity with its warped mirror, dulled with time and scratches from hands long gone. You avoid looking into it too long. It reflects too much. Beside the mirror is a wooden box filled with brushes, combs and tiny cloths, each item touched by every woman here. It's almost ceremonial, the way you reach in and pull out the hairbrush with the curved handle and the missing pearl at its base. You hold it for a moment. Then you carry it into the quarters, sit cross-legged on the floor near the lantern, and wait. You don't have to wait long, someone always comes. Tonight it's Sumaya who wanders in first, yawning and scratching the back of her head. She sees the brush in your hand and nods. "Me?" she asks. You nod back. She kneels and turns around, robe slipping down one shoulder to reveal skin dappled with old mosquito bites and the faint curve of a tattoo she never talks about. You don't ask. That's not what this time is for. You start brushing gently, from crown to nape, slow and even, like a tide pulling out to sea. She hums under her breath, a folk song maybe, or just nonsense, and lets her shoulders drop. The others trickle in slowly. Tomo, then Wren, then one of the new girls whose name you still don't remember because she's changed it twice already. The room begins to hum with quiet rituals. Someone lights a candle, low and flickering. Someone else brings out a dried orange peel to chew on. No one says much, no one needs to. This is moonlight hairbrushing time. It isn't official, no one schedules it. It just happens. Like mist gathering over still water. A nightly ceremony of sorts, older than any rule written by men. You brush or get brushed or simply sit in the soft glow and let the rhythm lull you. Tonight, Tomo brushes Wren's hair while Plum rubs oil into her own knees and mutters about getting too old for this nonsense. She's 24. Lady Yuzu calls that crone years. And she's not wrong. 24 here might as well be ancient. But you know the truth. The older you get, the more sacred these rituals become. Someone starts telling a ghost story, not the terrifying kind, just eerie enough to make everyone lean in. It's about a courtesan who fell in love with a spirit and refused to leave the house even after she died. Now she appears in mirrors, they say, brushing her hair with an invisible comb. The new girl shivers. The others roll their eyes but listen harder. Everyone knows at least one ghost story. Most of you are one, just not dead yet. There's a debate among scholars, always men of course, about whether courtesans participated in female-only bonding rituals. As if brushing hair and telling stories under a paper lantern is a mystery that needs decoding. They use phrases like domestic intimacy and communal grooming, missing the point entirely. This is communion, not with gods but with each other. A shared language spoken through fingertips, braids, silence. In a world where your worth is measured by how well you pretend, this is the one space where pretending isn't necessary. Here, you can just be a woman with tangled hair and tired bones and a longing for human closeness that doesn't ask for anything back. You finish brushing Sumaya's hair and she turns to you, eyes soft. You want yours done? You hesitate. You don't usually say yes. You're more the giver than the taker. But tonight, something aches in you. So you nod. She moves behind you, takes the brush from your wrist and begins with slow, deliberate strokes. You close your eyes. The bristles scrape your scalp gently, dragging tension out strand by strand. Behind your eyelids, colours bloom. Not visions exactly, just warmth. You remember your mother brushing your hair. Or maybe it was a dream. You remember the girl who used to braid flowers into your ponytail when you were still small and free and dirt-covered. You remember the first time you let another courtesan touch your hair and how terrifying it felt, how intimate. Like a surrender. There's a strange vulnerability in letting someone tend to you. You think about all the hands that have passed over your head, all the nights like this, all the men who came before you who once sat here and felt this same quiet comfort. There's something ancient about it, something holy. And just as Sumaya begins tying your hair into a loose braid, a loud knock jolts through the stillness. Everyone freezes. Another knock, harder, then a voice. Okay, San wants the girls ready downstairs. You exhale. Not danger, just the reminder. The world hasn't stopped turning while you've been wrapped in this softness. Sumaya finishes the braid quickly, tucks the end under your collar. Someone blows out the candle. Another girl hides the combs. The room dissolves back into something neutral, presentable. The spell breaks, but not entirely. You carry the feeling with you as you rise, robe shifting around your ankles, heart slower than it was an hour ago. You carry the braid, the warmth, the remembered touch. Later tonight you'll perform again. Maybe even smile with your mouth instead of your eyes. But for now you return to your futon with fingers that still remember the weight of another woman's hair in your hands. And when you finally sleep, you dream of combs made of moonlight and women who never stopped brushing even after death. Steam curls thick through the air, wrapping around your skin like breath. The bathhouse is full tonight. Not rowdy, not loud, just full. The kind of full where elbows brush and knees knock under the water, but no one complains because the heat seeps in deep, silencing most things. You slide slowly into the tub, the water biting at first, then blooming into that delicious kind of pain that pulls tension out of your bones like threads from a tight stitch. You sigh, not a performative sigh, not a flirtatious exhale, just a noise of relief, honest and low. Around you the women move in soft rhythms. Someone washes her hair with practiced circular motions. Another massages her calves with knuckles, jaw tight from habit or pain. Across the room, two girls sit facing each other, knees touching, trading back and forth confessions under their breath, their laughter dissolving into the steam before it can rise. The bathhouse is sacred for that. It's not just about getting clean. It's about being bare, about letting things out you can't say anywhere else. The matron doesn't come in here. Not unless someone's dead or bleeding or worse. She understands, in her own quiet way, that this space belongs to the courtesans, not to the house, not to the clients. Here, your skin's yours again. You lean your head back against the tiled rim and let your ears submerge just enough to muffle everything. It's like slipping underwater into another world. The voices above you become a soft, warbled symphony, distant and safe. You stay there for a while, drifting. Then, just as you're about to fall into that quiet place between thought and sleep, you hear a voice rise above the others. And then he said he loved me, with a straight face while looking at my feet. Laughter erupts. The water splashes around you. Someone chokes on her own amusement. Maybe he has a foot thing, someone offers between snorts. He kissed my ankle, the first voice groans. He said it was dignified. What does that even mean? More laughter. You sit up and wipe your face with your hands, grinning. The bathhouse is like that, half confessional, half comedy stage. The absurdity of your lives is safer to talk about here. Somehow, soaking in hot water makes everything just a little less sharp. There's a lull and then another woman speaks. Her voice is quieter. I had one who cried after and just burst into tears, said he missed his wife. Didn't stop him though, did it? No, she says, but I held him while he cried. The room goes still, not uncomfortable, just acknowledging the moment. You've all been there, held men who confused your touch for something more, for healing, for salvation, for love. Tomo, who's sitting on the edge of the smaller tub with her hair dripping onto her knees, says quietly, Sometimes I think they come here to remember themselves, not us. You nod, even though no one's looking. There's a debate among academics, somewhere far away from this room, about whether courtesans were emotionally available, a phrase that makes you want to roll your eyes so hard you might see your own brain. As if your emotional lives can be studied like insects under glass, as if you're simply vessels for other people's desire, incapable of depth. The truth is, you carry more secrets than most priests, and more grief than most widows. You just don't get to wear black for it. Someone starts humming an old lullaby, a tune that doesn't belong to anyone in particular, yet everyone knows. You hum along without meaning to. It's the kind of melody that wraps around the body and pulls you gently towards some version of home. There's a myth about a ghost who haunts bathhouses, always female, always wet, always weeping. Some say she's the spirit of a courtesan who drowned herself after a broken heart. Others claim she was murdered by a jealous wife. But the version you heard was different. That she stays behind not out of sorrow, but to listen. To eavesdrop on the living, to gather their confessions, their pain, their laughter, and carry it somewhere else. You wonder if she's here now, floating just beneath the surface, listening. You slide your fingers through the water, tracing lazy circles, and think of your own confessions, not the big ones, not the ones etched in ledgers or locked behind your teeth, the little ones, that you still miss your sister's voice, that sometimes you dream you're back in your childhood bed, barefoot, unbruised, that you once imagined a life as a tea merchant's wife just for the quiet, that you're still hoping for something. You dip under the water for a few seconds, holding your breath, holding yourself in place. When you rise, you feel lighter, not cleansed, not renewed, just rinsed. Enough to continue. Beside you, Plum leans back and says to no one, Do you think we'll be remembered? There's a long pause. Then Samir says, If not by name, then by what we left behind. What? Like wigs and broken hairpins? No, Toma says, eyes still closed, like stories. You feel that line settle into the room like incense. No one says anything for a while. The water moves slowly. A drip from the ceiling taps out a rhythm no one follows. Eventually, one by one, the women begin to rise, rinse, dry off. The room slowly empties, leaving only puddles and damp towels behind. You stay a little longer, watching steam curl toward the rafters. Listening to the echo of vanished voices, then you step out, towel wrapped around your shoulders, feet cold on the tiles. As you leave, you glance at the mirror near the door and half expect to see the ghost of the bathhouse woman there watching. But there's only you. Damp, soft-eyed, and quietly brave in a way no client will ever see. The next morning something feels off. Not in a dramatic thunderclap over the rooftop kind of way, just a quiet unease, the sort that creeps into your chest before your brain has figured out why. You feel it in the way the air moves, sluggish and heavy, and in the way the house sounds too quiet, like it's holding something back. You sit up on your futon, robe slipping from one shoulder, and glance around. Most of the others are still curled in sleep, limbs tangled in blankets, mouths open in dreams. Except one. Orin's corner is empty. Now that might not be unusual. Sometimes the matron sends girls out early. Private visits, hush-hush summons from clients too important to follow protocol. But something's wrong. Her bedding is still ruffled, her robe tossed casually over the edge of her pillow, like she'd only stepped out for a moment. Only she hasn't been seen since 2 days ago. You feel it in your gut. Some instincts never fade, no matter how many layers of paint you put over them. You rise, pad over, and kneel beside her things. There's a small wooden box tucked just under her mat, half hidden by habit or intention. You glance around once, no one's watching, and open it. Inside are little things: a dried blossom, brittle and forgotten, a piece of embroidery she was never quite finished with, a string of black beads, and a folded paper tucked into the side, nearly invisible against the wood. You don't mean to open it, but your fingers do anyway. The message is short, written in her hurried, half-cursive script. "If I don't come back, tell Tomo. Red fan, back gate." Your mouth goes dry. Tomo's name, a fan, a gate. Orin knew something, or was planning something. Either way, she suspected she might not return. That alone is enough to set your heart thudding against your ribs. You slip the note inside your sleeve and walk out into the corridor like nothing's happened. The hallway is still quiet, though further down you can hear the low murmur of servants preparing for the day. Rice being rinsed, water boiling, that faint tap-tap of sandals against wood. It all feels distant, muffled behind the sudden pressure building in your chest. You find Tomo by the well, drawing water with slow, deliberate motions. You don't say anything right away. You just stand nearby, waiting. She glances up, sees your face, and goes very still. You nod barely, then offer the folded paper. She doesn't read it at first. She just tucks it into her sleeve, mirroring your own gesture, and continues drawing water as though nothing happened. Only her hands are shaking. You want to ask what the note means, who she was meeting, what the red fan is, but you know better. This kind of truth isn't dragged out under the morning sun. It has to be unpacked slowly, like thread from a tangled spool, so you wait. That night she slips into your room quietly. No words, just a look. You sit together on your futon, knees touching. After a long silence, she speaks. She was going to run. You already knew, but hearing it spoken aloud is different. It sinks. I helped her arrange a meeting. Someone from the outside, a merchant who owed me a favour. She thought he could get her to the port. You nod. It makes sense. Orin was always clever, always half a step ahead, but clearly not far enough. Tomo exhales, fingers knotted in her lap. She had the fan, red silk, broken spent. It was the signal. If anything went wrong, she'd leave it at the gate. I checked. It wasn't there. The implications are obvious. She never made it that far. You sit in silence, you don't cry, neither does she. There's no space for that here, not now. Instead, you think about the last thing Orin said to you. Something trivial, something about someone's terrible singing voice. She laughed. And now she's gone. In the days that follow, you and Tomo become something like co-conspirators. You don't speak of the note again, but the knowledge binds you. You find yourselves watching the matron more closely, studying the way her eyes flicker when someone asks about Orin. You catch her one morning burning papers in the courtyard oven. You don't ask. You just watch the smoke rise. There's a story that gets told around the house. A cautionary tale, though no one says so out loud. It's about a courtesan who disappeared in the middle of winter. They say she left of her own will, that she fell in love and ran away to start a new life. It's a pretty lie, wrapped in brocade. You hear one of the new girls repeat it one night, eyes shining with romantic hope. You don't correct her. Why would you? Some illusions are worth keeping, but privately you make a decision. You retrieve Orin's note and fold it tighter, wrapping it in oilcloth and tucking it beneath the loose board in your floor. The same board where you've hidden your paintings. It doesn't belong to you, but it must not be forgotten. There's a fringe theory among certain researchers that courtesans developed subtle systems of resistance, networks of warning signals, escape attempts, and encoded messages traded in plain sight. It's often dismissed. Too romantic, too conspiratorial. After all, how could women who are so heavily controlled possibly organize anything so elaborate? You smile to yourself. They have no idea. One night, just before lights out, Tomo leaves something on your pillow. It's a hairpin, red lacquer. A tiny crane carved at the tip. Not Orin's, not yours, but it means something. You don't ask what. You just wear it the next day, tucked low in your bun, half hidden beneath silk flowers. And when Tomo sees it, she nods once and walks away. That's how it works here. Truths passed through was silence. Messages carried by symbols. Lives remembered in objects. Orin is gone, but not erased, and now you carry her forward, even if no one else knows. There's no delicate way to put this. You're bleeding. Not dramatically, not the kind of bleeding that earns gasps or candlelit concern, just the usual monthly curse, punctual as ever, stubbornly inconvenient and entirely unwelcome. You wake up with the familiar weight in your lower belly, dull, pulsing, mean, and that uncomfortable dampness you know too well. You close your eyes and exhale through your teeth. Another cycle, another week of hiding it beneath silken scent, pretending nothing's wrong while your uterus tries to collapse in on itself like a dying star. You rise slowly, careful not to wake the others, and make your way to the washroom with a fresh cloth tucked inside your sleeve. There's a shared basket hidden under the basin, threadbare rags, dried herbs, paper wraps, anything that helps. Someone's added lavender to the drawer again. You're grateful, even though it won't do much. It's the gesture that matters, a quiet kind of care. By the time you return to your sleeping mat, the others are beginning to stir. Plum is muttering something incoherent, face buried in her pillow. Tomo is already sitting upright, perfectly still the way she always does, like she's been up since before dawn watching the shadows change. You ease yourself down and press your palm to your stomach, hoping the heat helps. It doesn't. The thing about bleeding here is that it's not allowed to exist. You're expected to perform through it, smile through it, flirt through it. Only the highest-ranking courtesans can afford a rest day, and even that depends on the client. If he insists, you go, blood be damned, and God's forbid you say anything out loud. It's not proper, it's not elegant. Courtesans, after all, are meant to be ethereal, untouchable, above such base functions as leaking. But inside the quarters, when men aren't around, things are different. That morning, Samira spots you wincing as you sit down for breakfast. She slides a small cloth packet across the floor without looking up from her tea. You unfold it discreetly, dried ginger root and 2 bitter plum pits. You meet her eyes, and she just shrugs. "Helps me," she mumbles. That's how it goes. No announcements, no pity. Just small kindnesses passed hand to hand like contraband. There's a secret language around it too. If you see someone wearing their sash at 1 loop lower than usual, it means don't touch me. If someone has her hair pinned with a comb instead of her usual fan, it means she's bleeding and doesn't want to talk about it. A cherry blossom drawn in the corner of a shared notebook. Code for "do my shift if you can." It's not perfect. Sometimes you still have to go down to the guest rooms. Sometimes you sit for hours pretending to sip wine while your insides twist like ropes. But within these walls, there's at least a little softness. You lie on your side, curled in the thinnest version of yourself. Wren notices and brings her cushion over without asking. She lies down behind you, presses the warm side of her hand to your back and says nothing, just breathes. Later, as the sun climbs, the quarters shift into that strange, slow rhythm of a shared body. One woman soaks cloth in hot water and wrings it out for whoever needs it next. Another brings a cup of miso broth thick with seaweed. You drink it slowly, grateful for the salt. Not everyone is bleeding today, but everyone has, and everyone will again. There's something oddly comforting in that. The idea that this pain connects you, that your body, so often manipulated into pleasing others, still dares to demand care. Tomo speaks, voice low. In the south, they say if you burn the first cloth from your cycle and bury the ashes under a pine tree, your next child will be strong. Plum rolls her eyes. We're not exactly planting pine trees around here. No, Tomo says deadpan, just secrets. You'll laugh, gently, because laughing too hard hurts when you're cramping. You think of how little of this makes it into history, how scholars write pages on the architecture of the pleasure district, the fashion, the poetry, but not the blood, not the bellyaches or the ruined robes or the girls who staggered home after hours of performance with pain painted beneath their smiles. There's one artifact, though, that survived. A folded pouch of herbal medicine discovered in the false bottom of a drawer from a courtesan's dressing table. It was analysed decades later. Mugwort, ginger, powdered pearl. The exact blend is still debated, but one detail stuck with you. Pressed into the bottom corner was a strand of hair, coarse and dark, tied with a red thread. Possibly a personal marker, possibly a gift. No name was attached to the pouch, just a fragment of a woman's reality preserved by accident. You wonder if anyone will ever preserve yours. You suspect not. So you make mental notes, recording this day in your internal ledger. Woke up bleeding. Sumia shared ginger. Ren held my back. Tomo told a lie that felt kind. Plum made me laugh. Survived. Eventually you rise. There's always work to be done. You prepare a soft face, tie your robe higher than usual, and move through the day with the practiced grace of someone who has done this before and will do it again. By the time evening arrives, the worst of it has passed. Your body still aches. but it no longer screams. You sit on the porch alone, sipping broth and listening to the wind shift through the pine trees. And for the first time in hours, you smile, not because you're heel, but because you are held. There's a particular kind of laughter that only happens when women are truly alone, one part wicked, one part holy, with a glint of violence under the joke. Tonight, that laughter erupts in waves, loud enough to rattle the paper walls, bold enough to make the lamps flicker. You're not sure who started it. Maybe it was Plum, reenacting a client's failed attempt to compose a haiku mid-seduction, his trousers half off, his eyes crossed in concentration, mumbling something about moonlight, thighs, eternity. Or maybe it was Sumaya, who claimed she nearly bit her tongue off holding in a laugh when a minor lord tried to impress her with sword tricks and dropped the blade on his foot. Whatever the spark, the room is on fire with laughter now, and no one wants to put it out. You're doubled over, breathless, tears prickling the corners of your eyes. Beside you, Ren is making wheezing noises, slapping the floor with her palm like it might stop her from collapsing completely. Even Tomo, who rarely cracks a smile, has her hand over her mouth, eyes crinkled in private mirth. It feels good to laugh like this. Wild, borderline inappropriate. A reminder that you're still alive, still sharp, still capable of joy that has nothing to do with pleasing anyone but yourselves. You sit up, wiping your eyes, and say, "What about the time that idiot with the jade cufflinks asked if we all lived in one big bed like kittens?" More howling. "He asked me if we did pillow fights," another girl chimes in, tears streaking her cheeks. "With feathers!" Someone throws a cushion across the room in mockery. It explodes into a puff of dust and loose threads, and that somehow sets off another round of hysterics. Laughter here is currency, not the kind that buys things, but the kind that pays off the debt of endurance. Every giggle is a release valve, a small rebellion against the tight coil of daily survival. Men often assume you're always demure, always poised, always gently amused. But in reality, you're feral with it when you're alone. You think back to the time you nearly ruined a high-paying arrangement by laughing at the wrong moment. The client had been explaining very seriously how his ancestors were descended from a celestial fox. He leaned in dramatically, whispering that it explained his unusual virility. You tried to hold it in, you really did, but then he used the phrase ninefold manhood, and you snorted tea out your nose. He stormed out, didn't come back. You weren't even sorry. That same night when you told the story to the other girls, they laughed so hard Lady Yuzu threatened to move to the attic just for the silence. Tonight, though, even she's smiling from her corner. She sips her tea, shakes her head and mutters, "You lot are going to laugh yourselves into trouble." "We already are the trouble," someone mutters, and that gets a round of knowing chuckles. The conversation shifts, the way it always does when the jokes reach their peak. It dips into stories, then memories, then into sharp little tales passed around like forbidden candy. Tales of tricks and petty revenges, the kind only courtesans can pull off. Like the time Sumaya swapped out a nobleman's love poem for one about a duck with constipation. He read it aloud at dinner, with tears in his eyes, or when Plum pretended to faint every time a particular client touched her elbow. He believed it was an omen and stopped requesting her entirely. Tomo, of course, once slipped a sliver of crushed, dried plum under her tongue and let it stain her spit red. The client assumed she'd bitten her lip in passion. He called it her blood offering. He tipped triple. Even Lady Yuzu gets in on it now, her voice low and conspiratorial. She tells the story of a former courtesan who was so beautiful men fought duels over her. One of them claimed he would die for her honour, so she dared him to lick her sandal clean. He did, she says, smirking into her tea. Twice. The room erupts again. These are the kinds of stories no one else hears. Not the clients, not the scholars. These are the oral histories of the unrecorded, passed down in giggles and gasps and snorts. There's an old saying, probably made up by a courtesan herself, that if you make a man laugh in bed, he'll never forget you. But you all know the real truth. If you make each other laugh, you'll never forget it. Of course, not all laughter here is innocent. You've seen the kind that hurts, the pointed chuckles, the mocking glances, the shared smirks that leave someone sitting a little more quietly the next day. There are hierarchies, unspoken rules, alliances that shift faster than painted smiles. There's one girl, Aya, who used to laugh too loudly at the wrong moments. She'd misread the room. Once, she tried to join in with a joke she didn't understand, and Lady Yuzu turned to her with a look so cold it could have frozen sake. Aya barely speaks now. She stays near the doors, laughs into her sleeves. So tonight, you keep an eye on the edges, make sure no one's being left out. When you see Aya watching quietly, unsure whether she's welcome, you pat the floor beside you and say, "Come here, tell us about the man who thought tofu was a dessert." She blinks, then grins. "He dipped it in sugar syrup," she says, and her voice trembles at the edge of laughter. It doesn't take long before she's in the middle of it with everyone else, shoulders shaking, eyes alight. In this world, laughter is both a shield and a weapon. You wield it with care. There's a fringe theory that courtesans developed humour as a survival strategy, a way to navigate the constant performance without losing their sense of self. The scholars who write about it don't know what they're talking about. Humour isn't strategy, it's instinct. It's the way your souls climb out of the cracks they've been pushed into and stretch toward the light. As the laughter finally quiets and the women begin to drift back to their beds, the room feels warm, worn in like a favourite robe. Someone yawns, another mumbles, "My stomach hurts." You lie down with a smile still tugging at your mouth. Tonight you laughed like it could save you. And maybe, in a way, it did. You don't see her at first. She's small, quiet, almost decorative the way she stands near the entrance. Eyes wide. Back straight. Hands clasped in front of her robe like she's waiting to be posed. She has that look they all have in the beginning. Not beauty, though she has that too in the way of something barely touched by the world, but something rawer, something closer to animal, fear wrapped in silk. Her lips are trembling even though she's trying very hard not to let them, and when the matron finally says her name, Kiku, her voice breaks when she replies, "You've seen this before, the beginning of someone. It's like watching the birth of a ghost." You know exactly how the next few weeks will unfold, the slow dressing down of her former life, the new name, the new voice, the new smile, the training, the corrections, the ritual unmaking. She'll cry at night for a while. Some girls do it silently, some weep into the floorboards, some hold it in until their throat goes hoarse. They all cry eventually, even Tomo did. You remember that night, years ago, how she bit her knuckles to keep the sound in, how you offered her a piece of cold rice because you didn't know what else to do. You watch Kiku now standing too stiffly in her robes, flinching slightly every time someone speaks too loud. The matron dismisses her with a nod, and she's sent to the back quarters. That's where the transformation begins, where the other girls will bathe her, scrub her, dress her, teach her to walk, to eat, to smile. Not like herself, like someone else, like someone perfect. And tonight, for whatever reason, you're the one who's assigned to her. You find her standing near the bathhouse entrance, eyes darting toward the rising steam like she's afraid it might burn her. You gesture for her to follow. She does, but her steps are hesitant, like each one might snap a trap beneath her feet. In the changing room, she fidgets with the knot of her sash, clearly unsure what to do. You sit, untie your robe and slide it off, waiting. Eventually she copies you. She folds her clothes carefully, but then just stands there, arms wrapped around herself. She's shivering. "You can sit," you say, keeping your voice soft. "The water will warm you up." She lowers herself gingerly onto the stool. The tile is cold against her thighs. You fill a basin, pour the water slowly over her back. She gasps and flinches. You expected that. "What's your real name?" you ask. She pauses. Doesn't answer. You don't push. No one gives it up easily. It's the last thing they have that's theirs. You lather soap into a cloth and begin washing her back. She stiffens but doesn't stop you. You can feel every knot in her spine, the tension coiled in her muscles like a trapped thing. As you work, you talk, lightly, casually, nothing heavy. You tell her about the time someone mistook Lady Yuzu for an actual noblewoman and bowed so hard he passed out. You tell her about the night Ren forgot the words to a love poem and recited a recipe for pickled daikon instead. You hear her laugh, just once. A tiny exhale, like a hiccup, but it's a start. Later in the quarters, you show her where the sleeping mats are kept. You help her unfold her futon. You give her a better blanket than the one she was issued. Yours is warmer, and you can always steal another. She says thank you in a voice so quiet it barely exists. That night, as the lights dim and the room quiets, you hear her crying, not loudly, just little whimpering sounds barely audible over the wind. You don't say anything, but you get up, walk over and lie down beside her. She startles, stiffens, then relaxes when she realizes it's just you. You offer her your hand, she takes it. This is how it begins. Over the next days, you watch her shift. She moves through the house like a cat pressed against the walls, learning the edges. She watches everything. How the women dress, how they sit, how they tilt their heads just slightly when laughing. She's copying. It's how survival starts here. You help her with her first practice makeup session. She's clumsy with the brush, smudges her eyeliner, pokes herself in the eye. You both laugh, really laugh this time. She'll be fine, Sumra says when she sees the two of you giggling over a crooked lip line. Poor thing already has the look. What look? The one we all had, she replies, right before we stopped asking questions. Kiku starts asking fewer questions after that. She no longer startles when spoken to. She begins to respond with smiles that aren't hers. She stops crying at night. It's a little sad to watch, but it's also necessary. You know that. There's a story Lady Yuzu tells sometimes about the first girl she ever trained. She called her Little Bird, said she had a voice so sweet that men cried when she sang. But one night she stopped singing. No one knows why. Just stopped, refused to speak. She became a silent, graceful ghost of herself. And clients loved it. They called it mysterious. She made more money than anyone, Yuzu said, but she never laughed again. There's debate among scholars about whether the courtesan system truly broke girls or simply reshaped them, whether the transformation was total or partial, whether some part of the original self survived beneath the layers. But no one who's lived it needs to ask. You see it in Kiku, in the way she flinches less now, in the way she's learning to laugh at the right moments, in the way her old name slips further from her mouth each day. You've taught her what you could. You've given her what you had. The rest is up to her now. One night, weeks later, she lies down beside you again, just like that first night. She doesn't cry. Instead, she whispers, "Do you think I'm becoming like you?" You smile in the dark. "No," you say gently. "You're becoming like you. You just don't know her yet." And beside you, she nods. Quiet, brave, becoming. It's late again. One of those breathless hours where time folds in on itself and the world seems to exist only in candlelight and whispering paper walls. The house is quieter than usual tonight, but not in a restful way. It's the kind of quiet that holds tension in its throat. Everyone feels it, even if they don't say it aloud. The clients have been unusually generous this week, too generous. They come bearing news from the capital, from court, from high places where the air is perfumed with lies. And when they speak, the women listen. Behind the masks, beneath the laughter. You always listen. Tomo is already seated near the back of the quarters, her writing box open, brush in hand. You watch her from across the room as she writes, quick and careful. She dips into the inkstone with a practiced flick of the wrist, the candle beside her trembling ever so slightly in the warm draught. When she's finished, she folds the paper with reverence and slides it between the pages of a book with no title. The book disappears back into its hiding place beneath a loose tile under her mat. You wait until the room empties out, until the others have moved off to prepare for the next round of guests, and then you join her. "Another poem?" you ask casually, as if you don't already know. She doesn't look up. "Not this time." Tomo has always kept secrets like tea keeps warmth, quietly, stubbornly, but lately there's something new in her eyes. A weight and a fire. You sit beside her, letting the silence settle between you. Finally, she says, "They're moving troops east." You blink. "How do you know?" "One of the lords tonight was drunk and chatty. He said it like it was gossip, like it didn't matter." Your stomach knots. That's how it always begins, casual remarks in smoke-filled rooms, a careless boast, a warning disguised as a joke. "Does the matron know?" "She always knows," Tomo replies. "She just doesn't say anything until she has to." There's a long pause. And then, "Are you recording it?" She nods once, almost imperceptibly. This is what most people will never understand, that within these walls, between layers of powder and perfume, history is being documented. Not the kind with parades and proclamations, but the kind that lives in glances, in patterns, in pillow books and ink-stained pages tucked behind beams. You and the others hear the truth long before it ever reaches the streets, and sometimes, if the risk is worth it, you write it down. There's a theory, quiet and controversial, that some courtesans served as spies. Not the dramatic sword-wielding kind, the other kind, the patient kind, the ones who remember every name, every shift in tone, every map drawn sloppily on a napkin between gulps of wine. It said they kept pillow books, diaries written in code, often in the margins of poetry scrolls or disguised as menus. Some were burned, some survived. You've seen one once, years ago, not the whole thing, just a fragment. Tucked into the sleeve of a senior courtesan's robe, the characters disguised in a childish hand. It looked like a list of ingredients for a stew, until you realised the vegetables were actually names. Tomo has one too. You've never read it, but you've watched her write. You've seen the careful way she chooses words, not just to remember, but to preserve. I write because someone has to, she says quietly now. Not because it'll save us, but because someone, someday, will want to know. You nod, feeling the weight of that truth. There's a risk, of course. If the wrong person finds it, she could be beaten, or worse, the house could be raided, everyone punished. But she does it anyway, because some truths are heavier than fear. Later that night, after the guests are gone and the lanterns dim, you see her reading aloud to Kiku in a whisper-soft voice. It's not poetry, though it sounds like it. It's one of her stories, hidden in metaphor. A tale about a bird who flew across 3 provinces, watching soldiers move like ants on a map. The bird remembers everything, but when asked who sent her, she says nothing, just sings. Kiku listens with wide eyes, cradling her knees to her chest. She doesn't ask questions, not yet, but she's learning. And you listen too. After they go to sleep, you sit up, unable to settle. Your thoughts churn, you start your own letter. Not a diary, not something anyone will ever read. Just a single sheet. You write, "Tonight, I heard the truth in a whisper." I watch someone risk everything to write it down. I wonder if anyone will ever believe us. I wonder if they'll ever know that the world shifted in a room full of women pretending to laugh. You don't sign it. You fold it and tuck it beneath your mat. Tomorrow it may be gone. A maid might sweep it up, someone might burn it. But for now, it exists. That's enough. When you finally sleep, you dream of paper birds flying over the battlefields, ink trailing behind them like smoke. They leave no footprints, but they remember every step. Sometimes in the middle of the night when the quarters are still and your thoughts start pacing, you find yourself dreaming of elsewhere. Not an escape exactly. Escape implies something sudden, desperate. What you dream of is slower, quieter, the kind of leaving that feels like dissolving. You picture a small house outside the city, maybe near a river, where the only fabric on your body is worn linen and your name belongs solely to you again. You dream of mornings without powder, afternoons without performance, and evenings where silence is not suspicious but peaceful. You're not alone in this. Dreaming of elsewhere is practically a house pastime. Every courtesan has her version. Samira wants to run a noodle shop where she never has to flirt again. Plum dreams of a flower stall, says she wants her fingers to smell like dirt and chrysanthemums instead of incense and men's breath. Even Tomo, who never speaks of fantasy, once admitted she'd like a life where she doesn't have to write everything down in secret. These dreams pass between you like contraband. You whisper them in the dead time, write them in the margins of your ledgers, fold them into paper cranes and hide them under futons. You offer them up like prayers, sometimes you even believe them. Tonight you find Kiku staring out the window, chin resting on her knees. "What are you thinking about?" you ask, careful not to startle her. She glances at you, eyes soft. "Home, huh?" You sit beside her. "Do you remember it?" "Not all of it. I think I remember the sound of my mother's comb. It made a clicking noise when she dragged it through her hair. I don't remember her voice." You nod. That feels familiar. Your own memories of home are smudged now, like a painting left out in the rain. Faces without features, voices without names. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asks. You hesitate, then lie. "No." She watches you for a moment, sees through it, but says nothing. That's the code here. Sometimes we lie to protect the dream, not the truth. There was a girl once, Kohana, who actually left. Or tried to. No one knows the full story. One morning her futon was rolled, her things gone, and the matron said she'd been married off to a merchant in Nagasaki. But then someone found her kanzashi in the alley by the rear gate, bent, bloodied. She was never mentioned again. Still, the dream persists. Not long ago, a client offered you money to run away with him. He was drunk, his breath reeking of sake and privilege, eyes glassy with romance. "I'll build you a villa," he slurred. "You'll never have to entertain another man again." You smiled, sipped your wine, and let the silence answer for you. He didn't ask again. You don't trust those offers. Even if they're sincere, they're only sincere right then. And you know better than to build your freedom on someone else's fleeting affection. But still, sometimes the ache to leave is so strong it sits behind your ribs like a second heartbeat. You've made maps in your mind. You know where the guards stand when the back gate is unlatched, which servants can be bribed with sweets or secrets. You've timed the distance to the port. You've memorized the faces of travellers who don't ask questions. You've even packed a bag once, just to see if it would fit everything you thought you needed. It didn't. The truth is, you're not sure what you want more, to go or to be someone who can go. There's a theory, quiet and unpopular, that some courtesans stayed not because they had no other options, but because leaving meant abandoning the only place they'd ever had power. Even if that power was conditional, even if it was dangerous, it was theirs. You understand that now, because here, within the cage, you've built something, a version of yourself that's sharp and enduring. You've made allies. You've learned how to move through the world unseen and unforgettable at once. Out there, you'd be just another woman with no name, no title, no leverage. Still, the dream lingers. One evening, Lady Yuzu tells a story over tea. No one asked for it. She just begins, voice low and even, eyes far away. There was a girl who fell in love with a fisherman. He had strong hands and gentle eyes, and he promised to take her away from all this. He said he'd wait every night at the riverbank. She went one night, late, in the rain. No one saw her leave. You wait for the twist. There is always a twist. She never came back, Yuzu says simply. Some say he drowned her. Some say she slipped and was taken by the current. Some say she made it all the way to the coast and now sells seashells to children. Doesn't matter. Why not? Kiku asks. Because all that matters is that she went, that she tried, that she dared to want something else. Afterward, when everyone's gone to bed, you find yourself staring out the window again. The garden is quiet, the pine trees swaying slightly in the wind. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city pulses with life. Markets closing, cats fighting over scraps, travellers laying down their burdens, and somewhere even farther, the sea. You imagine it now. The road, the river, the night air on your face, the weight of your robes left behind, the sound of your real name spoken aloud without shame or performance. Then someone stirs behind you. A soft snore, the rustle of blankets. This is your life, you think. And yet, you whisper to the night, not forever. The breeze shifts, and for a second it feels like a reply. Sometimes survival looks like softness. Not resilience, not strategy, not cunning, but softness. The kind that's so ordinary, so small, it's almost invisible. That's what today is. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent. Just a long, slow afternoon inside the quarters where nothing happens, except the steady beat of small comforts. Tea being poured, fabric being mended, a cat snoring under the table. You wake late and stretch under your blanket, body support in all the usual places but not in crisis, not alarmed. It's a day off. No clients, no inspection, just you, your breaths, and a few stolen hours where you can exist as something other than a character in someone else's fantasy. The house is quiet, not empty, just resting. You pad across the floor barefoot and find Sumaya watering her herbs. She keeps them in chipped porcelain cups lined along the windowsill. Shiso, lemon balm, 2 scrawny sprigs of mint. You don't know where she got them, but you suspect some servant has been sneaking cuttings in from the market. "I don't talk to them," she says without looking at you, "unless you have something nice to say." You lean against the windowsill. "They look like they're dying," she glares. "That's not nice." Still, she grins, and you both let out that kind of laugh only shared on slow days, thin but real. She tucks one of the cups back into place, muttering at the mint like it personally offended her. You sit beside her and watch the sun move across the floor. It feels warm on your knees. It feels like nothing important is expected of you. You breathe into that feeling. Elsewhere in the room, Kiku is brushing the cat. It's one of the older strays who wandered in years ago and never left. Grey fur with patches of beige, one ear missing, tail always twitching like it's having its own private conversation. No one knows its name. It responds to none. It just exists, and is tolerated like a moody cousin who who occasionally brings mice to the doorstep as gifts. Ren is working on a piece of embroidery, not for a client, just for herself. She's stitching a pattern of waves, though she's never seen the ocean. She doesn't speak, just stabs the needle through the fabric again and again like she's trying to make sense of something too large to say aloud. She offers no commentary when her thread tangles, just sighs, untangles, and continues. You pull your own box out from under your mat and open the lid slowly. Inside are the things you keep close when you don't want to think. Your pigments and pigment stones, your folded paper, the little brushes you've worn smooth with years of use. Today you decide to paint, not for beauty, not for practice, just to feel something move from inside you to the page. You begin with simple lines, nothing ambitious, a branch, a drooping blossom, a cluster of mushrooms at the base of a tree. You let the brush tell you what it wants to become. Plum comes over and watches for a while without speaking. That one looks sad, she says eventually, pointing at one of the blossoms. They all do, you reply. She shrugs. Maybe that's just what flowers look like when no one's watching. She wanders off again, leaving you alone with your thoughts. There's something healing in this kind of quiet. Not the silence of suppression, but the quiet that comes when everyone is just being. When no one is playing a role, you've spent so much of your life performing that it sometimes feels unnatural to sit still, to not be useful or pleasing. But this softness, this ordinary hour with no expectations, is where the deepest truths bloom. Somewhere near the back you hear Lady Yuzu humming. It's the same tune she hums every time she's repairing an old sash, some forgotten lullaby that none of you know the words to. She's got a spool of gold thread and a pile of fraying robes in her lap. She doesn't hum for others, she hums for herself. You've come to love that sound, though you'd never admit it out loud. Then there's the girl who likes to talk to the houseplants. Look at you, she says now to the scrawny vine in the corner. Trying again? Good for you. She waters it with a cracked teacup and nods like she's imparted great wisdom. Tomo passes her with a towel over one shoulder, heading toward the bathhouse. She doesn't say anything, just raises a brow in amusement. The girl salutes her like a soldier and goes back to whispering to the vine. This is your family. Not by blood, not by choice exactly, but by survival. You've bled beside these women. You've shared heat on winter nights, shared cough drops, hidden each other's tears behind layers of laughter. You've watched them get dressed for nights you knew they didn't want to live through. You've handed them perfume, combed their hair, held their wrists when their hands shook, and they've done the same for you. No one outside this world will ever understand the depth of these ties. They'll write papers about courtesan rivalry and hierarchies and competition. They'll speculate on secret romances and jealous fights and dramatic poisonings. But they'll miss this. The way someone silently pours you tea when they see the slump in your shoulders. The way someone drapes a warmer shawl over your sleeping body without a word. They'll miss the softness. There's a small shrine near the entrance of the quarters. Most girls ignore it. But today, Ren lights a stick of incense and bows. Not for any god, not for luck, or just because it feels like the right thing to do. You watch the smoke curl upward, thin and tentative, and for a moment you feel safe. Not happy, not whole, but safe. That's rare. You finish your painting. It's not beautiful, it's not impressive, but it's honest. You leave it out to dry, unhidden, in plain sight, and you spend the rest of the afternoon sitting in the sun with a warm cup of barley tea, surrounded by women who know your name, not the painted one, not the sold one, but the real one that still breathes beneath it all. It begins with an empty tray, just that. A simple serving tray, lacquered, red-edged, slightly chipped at one corner, returned to the quarters without the dish it left with. At first, no one says anything. These things happen. Servants get careless. Clients get greedy. Dishes are misplaced. But when a second tray is returned with the silver lid slightly bent, and then a third with lipstick stains that don't match anyone's shade, people start to notice. Then the wine goes missing. Not the cheap stuff that they keep for show, but the better bottle, the one saved for special clients, hidden beneath the stair panel where even the matron rarely checks. By the third day, tension has begun to thicken the air. Voices sharpen, eyes dart. The usual rhythm of the quarters, loose and teasing, full of private jokes and comfortable silence, tightens like a thread pulled taut. You notice it in the way Lady Yuzu counts her hairpins out loud now, even though she never used to. In how Sumaya starts locking her lacquer box even when she's only stepping out to pee. And in how the matron lingers at the threshold longer than usual, her shadow stretching just past the doorway like it's listening in. You've lived in this house long enough to know when something is breaking. You gather with the others in the common room, seated around the battered low table with its warped leg, and one scorched corner from someone's forgotten candle. No one eats, no one braids hair. Kiku picks at the fraying edge of her sleeve. Plum spins her chopsticks in a slow, deliberate circle. The tray with the missing wine bottle sits in the middle of the table like an accusation. "Someone's stealing," says Tomo flatly. The words drop like pebbles into deep water. No one denies it. Not out loud. Not this time. Sumire sighs. "Could have just asked for help if someone needed it." "Or told the matron," mutters Plum. "She has a rainy day fund. She says she doesn't, but she does." Ren shrugs. "Or just taken the cheap stuff." Lady Yuzu's eyes narrow. "This isn't about the cheap stuff." She's right, and you all know it. What's being stolen isn't food or wine or makeup, it's trust. And once that's gone, nothing in this house works right. There's a long pause. Then Tomo says, "We handle it, not the matron. We keep it inside." No one argues. If the matron gets involved, things will get ugly. Private spaces searched, accusations thrown. Maybe worse, it's happened before, so a silent agreement forms, one that doesn't need to be spoken aloud. You'll find out who did it, quietly, carefully, among yourselves. The next few days feel like moving through fog. Everyone is watching everyone. The ease of living together, of laughing, sharing tea, brushing hair, vanishes. Now you count cups. You notice who lingers too long near the storage shelf. You check your robe pocket twice before sleeping. You hate it. Then late one night you find it. You're looking for a clean cloth in the storage closet. Just another mindless task in an evening full of them. You shift a box and it slides oddly. Too heavy, too deliberate. Inside, tucked beneath layers of folded robes that don't belong to anyone you know, is the missing wine bottle. Half full. Beside it, a pouch of sugar candies you thought had simply run out. And a brocade sash. Sumaya's been turning the quarters upside down for all week. You stare at the items in silence, and then you hear the breath behind you, Kiku. She's standing there, eyes wide, hands frozen mid-reach like she wasn't expecting to be caught. Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. She looks like a child, not because she is one, but because she has suddenly remembered how small she still feels. She starts and stops. Her voice shakes. "I wasn't going to keep it. I just wanted something." Your throat tightens. She crumples into a crouch on the floor, arms wrapped around her knees. "I didn't even drink the wine. I just wanted to hold it, to feel like I had something valuable. Like I owned something that wasn't borrowed or worn down or handed off from someone else. The anger that had started to bloom inside you and fades. What's left is something messier, sadder, more familiar. You kneel beside her. "Why didn't you just ask her?" She laughs bitterly. "Ask? For what? A sash? A full stomach? A sense of control? I don't even know who I am anymore. I just needed to feel like I could take something back. Just one thing." You sit with her there, on the cold floor for a long time. In the end, you don't report her. Instead, you gather the items. You return the wine. You leave the candies on Sumire's pillow. You refold the sash and place it neatly back into the drawer. You say nothing to the others, except for Tomo. You tell her in private. She listens without judgment, and when you're finished, she sighs. Let her keep the closet. You blink. What? She's already filled it with shame. Might as well let her turn it into something useful. And so, the next day, you place a small cushion in the closet, a cup of tea, a clean rag to sit on. You leave it slightly open. Kiku doesn't thank you, but a few nights later you pass by and see the door cracked. A flicker of candlelight, the faint sound of quiet breathing inside, a sanctuary, not much, but something. There's a record in an obscure pillow book, rarely translated, mostly dismissed, that speaks of a hidden cupboard in a courtesan house, where girls left offerings for one another in secret. Letters, herbs, sweets, coins, not out of charity, but out of understanding. The writer never names the house. You suspect it could be this one. Because here, now, you've remembered what you're really trying to preserve. Not possessions, not appearances, but each other. The rain begins in the late afternoon, first as a gentle tapping against the roof, then as a steady drum that fills every corner of the house. The smell of wet wood and earth drifts through the sliding paper doors, mixing with the faint scent of incense and tea. Inside, the quarters feel heavier, warmer, more intimate. Everyone moves slower than usual, letting the rhythm of the storm dictate their own. The wind whistles around corners and rattles the lanterns, yet no one leaves their mats. Instead, they settle into the smell, the warmth, and the quiet chatter that doesn't carry beyond these walls. You find yourself near the window, watching the drops collide with the gravel outside, forming temporary rivers that vanish just as quickly. Kiku sits beside you, knees tucked into her chest, eyes wide. You don't speak. Words seem unnecessary. The storm is enough. The sound of rain against paper, the muted laughter from the girls who play a card game by candlelight, the low murmur of Lady Yuzu, combing her hair in the corner. This is a kind of symphony you didn't know you needed. Plum is laughing over a ridiculous story about a client who mistook a sugar chest for a treasure box and tried to hide it under his sleeve, only to trip over his own sandals. Samira rolls her eyes but can't suppress a grin, brushing crumbs off her lap. Ren whispers commentary in Kiku's ear, guiding her in subtle ways, how to sit, how to hold her cup, how to tilt her head just so for the softest, most disarming smile. You watch the exchange quietly. Soft training, not performance, nothing men will ever see, and nothing recorded in the history books. You lean back against the sill, letting your fingers brush the cool wood. Outside, the courtyard is slick and dark, stones glinting with water. You remember the first time you tried to step out here in a storm, your kimono soaked in minutes, the cold rain stinging your skin. It was shocking and honest, a small reminder that the world still existed beyond the house. Now, years later, you feel differently. You understand storms aren't just punishment, they're markers of passage, of change, of hidden growth. Tomo passes, carrying a small tray of tea, steam curling up in tiny spirals. She sets it between you and Kiku without a word. The silence stretches, comfortable now, the kind that grows from trust, from the knowledge that nothing needs performance here. Kiku dips her hands in the warm cup and lets her fingers linger in the water. Her eyes trace the raindrops, following their paths down the window pane. She doesn't speak yet, but her shoulders begin to relax. "You'll get used to it," you say quietly, voice low. The storm, the quiet, the way the house breathes when men aren't here. Kiku doesn't answer. Only nods once. You think of the ledger in the attic, the one filled with names and secrets and hidden fates. So many women have come before her, each leaving a fragment of themselves behind in ink, fabric, or whispered memory. Kiku is still new to this, still learning what it means to survive here, not just physically, but emotionally. To understand that power is subtle, and that sometimes it lives in the spaces between gestures, between laughter, between storms. Samira passes again, carrying a tray of small fried cakes. She places them before Kiku with a wink, saying, "Eat before you vanish into a puddle of poetry." Plum snickers beside her, shaking her head. Kiku takes a small piece, bites carefully, and her shoulders relax another inch. Small victories, quiet moments, they build resilience brick by brick. The storm continues. Relentless and soothing, shadows stretch along the walls, lanterns flicker, a low hum of conversation and clinking cups fills the spaces in between the rain's percussion. You notice how the women's shadows merge with the darkness, how the corners of the room hold their movements like gentle ghosts. These moments, invisible to the outside world, become the backbone of everything, strength and comfort, quietly stitched together by patience and trust. Later, as the rain tapers to a drizzle, you and Kiku sit by the window for a long time. No words are exchanged, only the shared warmth of proximity, the subtle brush of hands, the soft rhythm of a house breathing. And as the clouds begin to break, revealing streaks of moonlight, you know something essential has been learned. Survival is not just endurance, it's the quiet connections, the unnoticed rituals, the small acts of care that bind you together. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of dripping water and soft laughter sink in. Outside, the world is wet and wild. Inside, you are safe. For tonight, that is enough. The wind shifts overnight, carrying the scent of wet earth into the house, tangy and sweet, mixing with the lingering aroma of incense and tea. Morning comes quietly, the kind of soft dawn that makes you almost forget the darkness that preceded it. You wake on your futon to the muted creaks of the wooden floorboards, the delicate rustle of robes as someone moves through the corridors. No clients yet, no matron pacing, just the subtle rhythm of a house full of women who breathe as if in unison. attuned to one another in ways outsiders could never understand. You stretch and roll out of your futon, bare feet pressing against the cool tatami. The world outside the screens is washed in grey, a thin mist curling over rooftops and courtyards, blurring boundaries. Inside, the smell of freshly brewed barley tea beckons. You pour a cup, savouring the warmth as it travels down your throat, and watch Kiku across the room, carefully folding her robes, her fingers stiff with habit but growing surer by the day. She moves more naturally now, a little less hesitant, as though the house itself is teaching her how to inhabit it. Sumaira approaches with a small plate of pickled vegetables. She slides it toward you without a word, then disappears back into the hallway, already attending to some chore only she understands. Plum follows, carrying a bowl of sweetened rice cakes, and lays them beside Kiku with a teasing smile. "Eat before you vanish into shadows," she says, and even Kiku smiles faintly, the gesture cautious but genuine. These small routines, these tiny rituals, are the threads that weave the household together. They are survival disguised as ordinary domesticity. You notice Lady Yuzu moving silently in the corner, her back straight, eyes distant yet alert. She's reviewing her own preparations, but her gaze occasionally flicks to each of you, tracking without intrusion, a subtle reminder that she's always aware. You've learned to interpret her silences as guidance, her murmured advice as instruction. There's a rhythm to her authority that no one challenges, not because it's harsh, but because it's precise. You've watched her for years, learned the timing, the nuance, and the unspoken understanding that keeps the quarters running smoothly, even when chaos simmers just below the surface. Kiku is brushing her hair slowly, deliberately, the soft rhythm punctuated by the occasional pluck of a knot. You kneel beside her with your own brush, guiding her hands just slightly, showing her the subtle ways to smooth strands without tearing, how to control the sway of the comb, the pressure of the bristles. Her hands tremble initially, but you do not rush. The art here is patience, repetition, attention, not speed. You remember your first weeks, the clumsy fingers, the small mistakes, the quiet humiliation. Watching her, you feel both empathy and pride. She will survive, slowly but surely, if she persists. Outside, the courtyard is slick with rain. Puddles reflecting fractured images of paper walls and latticed windows. The sound of water dripping from the eaves forms a slow counterpoint to the muted chatter and the soft clatter of utensils in the inner rooms. You feel the weight of history in these rhythms, centuries of women performing, hiding, surviving in the same spaces, their lives overlapping like waves in the same tide. Each act of care, each whispered secret, each stolen moment of laughter or defiance is a record, even if no one outside will ever know. Tomo enters quietly, carrying a small bundle of fresh linens. She kneels beside Kiku, helping her fold them with care, demonstrating the methodical motions that save effort and avoid mistakes. No words are necessary. Actions speak louder here than speech. You realize that teaching Kiku isn't about instructions alone. It's about transmitting patience, resilience, the small, almost invisible skills that ensure someone can endure long after guidance is gone. You sip your tea, savouring the warmth, and feel a fleeting, rare sense of contentment. This is what survival looks like. Not daring escapes, not grand gestures, not sudden rebellion, but the quiet persistence of life continued with care and attention. These routines, these silent observances, bind you to each other in ways that cannot be documented, cannot be sold, cannot be stolen. They are the invisible architecture of safety, trust, and continuity. By mid-morning, the house has settled fully into this rhythm. Brushes glide across hair, cloth is folded with precision, tea is poured in small, steady streams, and the quiet laughter of private jokes drifts through the halls. You glance around at the women, at Kiku learning to move through the world a little more confidently with each passing day, and feel the pulse of the household, resilient, interdependent, unbroken. For a moment, you let yourself linger in the stillness, letting the rhythm of survival, care, and quiet guidance fill your chest. This is more than routine, it's sanctuary. And for now, it is enough. Evening drifts in slowly, the kind of dusk that hangs between gold and grey, brushing every corner of the house with softness. The lanterns are lit one by one, their amber lights spilling over the polished floors and paper screens, casting long, wavering shadows. You sit near the window, watching the play of light, listening to the distant patter of rain against the eaves. The day has been quiet, almost impossibly so, and yet there's a hum of expectancy in the air. Everyone knows something is about to happen. You feel it in the way Kiku straightens her spine, in the subtle tilt of Plum's head, in the way Lady Yuzu's eyes flash briefly, like a signal, before returning to the quiet observation of the room. The matron has left the quarters temporarily, which means the next hour belongs entirely to the women. No clients, no obligations, just presence, shared and deliberate. The ritual begins with small movements. Sumaya lining up bowls and cloths, Kiku carefully setting her teacup just so, Ren adjusting the cushions near the hearth so that warmth reaches everyone equally. Each gesture is quiet, considered, almost ceremonial. It's the kind of control you can exercise when the world outside holds no power over you, not for a few brief hours. You notice how even the smallest acts, the gentle patting of a stray cat, the folding of a sleeve, seem magnified under the lantern light. Every action becomes significant, deliberate, a testament to care in a world that usually demands performance. Tomo begins her quiet work, arranging small sheets of paper, brushing them with ink, writing codes only she understands. You glance at her, and she nods once, a subtle acknowledgement that she knows you are watching. You don't need to ask, you understand. The ledger in the attic, the hidden messages, the secrets tucked into plain sight, they all live here in these hours. They persist because someone must preserve them quietly and visibly, with patience and precision. The house itself seems to recognize it, the air thickening with the sense of responsibility. The women move almost in synchrony, each action echoing another. The ritual isn't rehearsed. It doesn't need to be. It's instinct, survival, inheritance. Kiku leans close to your side, whispering about something trivial, a spilled cup, a crooked brushstroke, but even her small words feel heavier now. The rhythm of the room absorbs them, lets them settle gently into memory. You offer her a cup of tea, warmed just so, and she takes it without speaking. There's trust in that silence. You realize that trust is as much an art as anything else practiced here. The clients see only curated selves, but you and the others see beneath the surface. You see the tremors, the hesitations, the cracks in confidence, and you support each other quietly, without spectacle. Plum begins telling a story, half joking, about a client who once attempted to balance a fan on his nose while reciting poetry. The story is ridiculous, the images vivid, and everyone laughs softly. Not performative laughter, not the kind meant to entertain men or uphold appearances, but the kind that bubbles up from shared understanding, from intimate observation, from the recognition of life in its absurdity. Even Lady Yuzu cracks a slight smile, though her eyes remain sharp, scanning the room. Every smile is a small rebellion, a quiet assertion of identity. You watch Kiku's laughter join in, hesitant at first, then more freely. It's the sound of adaptation, of learning, of survival being expressed as joy, however fragile. After the laughter dies down, the women settle into smaller tasks, folding robes, polishing hairpins, checking linens, mending minor tears. Each movement is deliberate, the air thick with the quiet hum of intent. There's a story here that outsiders never hear, of small triumphs, hidden victories, the way women navigate this world together, quietly without audience or applause. Every stitch, every brush stroke, every careful step through the corridors becomes a narrative of endurance and control. You lean back, letting the warmth of the lanterns in the room seep into you. The scent of tea, incense, damp wood, and faint perfume fills the senses. There is no performance now, no facade, no expectation of being noticed, only presence. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the rhythm of the house, the slow breathing of women who have survived, who continue to survive, who preserve one another. In these moments, fleeting as they are, you feel it. The truth of the house, the hidden life of its inhabitants, the threads that tie past to present, the quiet care, the laughter, the whispered secrets, the rituals unseen by outsiders. These are the things that endure. These are the treasures. And you, for this brief span, are fully part of them. Not a performer, not a shadow, but a witness and participant in the living memory of the women who came before and those who will follow. The night is thick, the kind that presses gently against the paper walls and fills the corridors with a dense hush. Lanterns flicker low, casting shadows that curl and stretch along the floor like lazy animals. You move quietly through the quarters, bare feet brushing the tatami, feeling the soft give beneath your toes. It's late, far past the time most of the girls would be awake, but some never truly sleep, they only rest, bodies relaxed, minds alert. You pass Kiku curled on her mat, the small red hairpin tucked just so in her bun, and you let her be. She's learned the rhythm of the house, absorbed the hidden language, begun to understand how to move in silence and still be seen. Watching her, you see the reflection of yourself when you first arrived, uncertain, cautious, but resolute. Lady Yuzu is at her small desk, polishing a hairpin with slow, deliberate movements, her fingers steady despite the fatigue of years. She glances up at you with a faint nod. No words are necessary. You understand each other perfectly. This is the way authority works here. Not loud or demanding, but quiet, precise, and deeply respected. Every gesture she makes carries a weight that none of the newcomers can yet grasp. You remember the first time she looked at you like that, measured, assessing, but not unkind, and how you had spent days afterward deciphering it in every detail of posture and tone. Now, years later, you recognize the same signal passing silently between you. Acknowledgement, inclusion, trust. The rest of the quarters are asleep or near it. Soft snoring, the shift of blankets, faint murmurs of dreams seep through the silence. You sit on the edge of your futon, feeling the warmth of the blanket and the faint coolness of the floor beneath. Outside, the wind taps against the eaves, a subtle percussion that blends with the breathing of the house. This is a different kind of performance, not one for clients, not for spectators, but for each other. Even when unseen, these moments matter. They are the scaffolding of survival, trust, and a memory in a world that often seeks to erase both. You take a small lacquered box from beneath your mat. Inside are fragments of your life in this house, letters you never sent, small sketches of the women who shared their secrets, tiny offerings you found or made over the years. You run your fingers across them, feeling the weight of what they represent. Each object is a testament to endurance, to care, to quiet rebellion against the constraints of expectation. You wonder how many other boxes are tucked beneath other mats, holding similar treasures, each a story never fully told but never lost either. From the far corner a faint laugh echoes. Not a harsh sound, not forced, but something soft and intimate, the sound of a woman discovering her own resilience in small absurd moments. You smile. It could be Kiku or Ren or even Tomo letting herself be human in a way the clients would never permit. That laugh carries farther than the walls, in your mind at least, threading together the disparate lives under this roof. It is proof that the hidden life of the house is alive, persistent, unbroken. The matron's absence tonight is total. The silence is no longer tense but intentional. You feel the pulse of the house, measured, deliberate, quiet but unyielding. You think about the ledger hidden in the attic, the notes tucked beneath floorboards, the stories written in secret margins. They all belong here. In this space of women who have learned the language of survival and intimacy without the need for validation from the outside world. Every whispered secret, every gentle touch, every stolen moment of humour or comfort is preserved not in grand chronicles, but in the living memory of those who carry it forward. As you lie back, pulling the blanket over your shoulders, you watch the faint outline of the pine tree outside the window, branches swaying in the wind, casting shifting shadows across the floor. The storm has passed. Only the soft aftermath remains. The scent of wet earth, the sound of water dripping from the eaves, the quiet presence of women who have survived, and the space to simply be. In this suspended time, you understand something essential. The house is not just a shelter, not just a workplace, not just a stage. It is a living gallery, a vessel of endurance, a testament to the lives that have come and gone, and to the ones still breathing, laughing, surviving within its walls. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of the house settle around you. The women who came before, the ones who will come after, and the ones still here are all part of a single unbroken lineage. And for the first time tonight, you feel entirely present within it, a witness, a participant, a keeper of the quiet truths. The room hums with soft, invisible life, the legacy of hidden lives carried forward, unnoticed but unbroken. As the night stretches to its deepest hours, the house breathes around you. Lanterns flicker faintly, the walls soaked with centuries of stories that have never left these quarters. You feel the weight and the warmth of everything lived here, The laughter, the whispered secrets, the carefully concealed grief, and the small private rebellions. Every gesture, from the folding of a robe to the quiet act of sharing tea, carries meaning far beyond what anyone outside would understand. Each courtesan, past and present, has left traces, small but enduring, stitched into the fabric of the house and the people within it. You think of Kiku now quietly sleeping, slowly finding her place in this strange and demanding world. You remember Orin, the disappeared girl whose memory you still carry. You think of the ledger hidden in the attic, of letters and offerings tucked beneath floorboards, of brushes and pigments and hairpins, each object a fragment of life preserved against forgetting. And you understand deeply that survival here is not just about navigating men or earning favour. It is about creating these secret worlds, finding solace in shared rituals, and maintaining a lineage of care and memory that defies the passage of time. The house is silent now, but alive. The women are breathing, dreaming, existing in the spaces they have carved for themselves. You close your eyes and feel the pulse of continuity, of lives observed and preserved, of laughter that never fully dies, of the intimacy that persists without witnesses. Outside, the world goes on, unaware. Inside, the hidden lives flourish quietly, stubbornly, beautifully, and for tonight, you rest within it. You are part of it. The lineage of women who have loved, endured, and persisted continues with you. Every quiet act, every subtle gesture, every whispered story matters. The hidden lives live on,